Bienvenidos a todos los que nos acompañan de nuestra comunidad hispanohablante. Si usted necesita traducción al español, le invitamos que nos acompañe, y la señora Juanita Flores está disponible para traducir a través de línea telefónica. Le recordamos que si usted gusta hacer un comentario, pregunta o recomendación directamente a la Junta Directiva, lo puede hacer usando el signo de asterisco y el número 9 desde su teléfono. Esto le indicará que puede levantar la mano para dar su comentario. Para unirse a la traducción ahora mismo, por favor marque al número 1-669-900-6833, con el número de identificación 889-5905-1042 y use la clave 094-080. Toda esta información la puede encontrar en nuestra página de internet del Distrito Escolar, visitando www.ssfusd.org y busque bajo la sección de School Board Meetings. Muchas gracias.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the meeting of the South San Francisco Unified School District Board of Trustees to order, reconvening into open session. Roll call, please.
Student trustee Avila Gomez.
Here.
Trustee Baker.
Here.
Trustee Shea.
Here.
Trustee Murray.
Here.
Vice President Richardson. Here. President Lujan.
Present. Thank you very much. Okay. And I believe this brings us to our Pledge of Allegiance. Principal Kovacha, would you like to introduce our student this evening?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, President Lujan, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Moore, Cabinet, and community members. It is with great honor that I have the opportunity to introduce our student representative, Miss Zoe Lindell, who is one of our second grade scholars at Martin. Her second grade teacher, Miss Lynch, shared a few things about Zoe. Zoe has attended Martin since kindergarten. She loves reading and books. Her favorite series currently is The Black Lagoon. She enjoys science, especially learning about dinosaurs and insects. She loves art as well and is quite the artist. Outside of school, she has been attending jiu-jitsu since preschool. She just advanced to the next level. She also has been hula dancing for the last 4 years. She enjoys performing at her hula dance shows. Last week, she was excited to start basketball and is really excited to play on the team. She also loves spending time with her family and doing things with her little brother. Zoe stated that she loves making new friends wherever she goes. Zoe is looking forward to all she's going to learn this year in second grade. We are grateful for Zoe and her family joining us tonight. Zoe, if you can please lead us with a pledge. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Zoe Lindell, and I am in second grade in Miss Lynch's class. Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may have a seat now.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Zoe. We're very grateful that you helped us start our meeting in such a wonderful way. We're glad to have you. Okay, our next portion of the meeting this evening is our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the South San Francisco Unified School District is located on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community, and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. Reporting out from closed session.
Thank you, President Lujan. Reporting out the 3 items from closed session. Item number 1, there is nothing to report out. Item number 2, there is nothing to report out. And item number 3, there is nothing to report out.
Thank you, Dr. Spalding. Review of agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda this evening? None, no changes. I believe this brings us to PTA Council Remarks. Mr. Santa.
Good evening, President Lujan, Superintendent Moore, Cabinet, trustees, and members of the audience. I wanted to first report that recently we had our PTA officers training, working with trainers provided by 17th District PTA of San Mateo County. We had an extremely good attendance from the South San Francisco units, and a lot of great things, a lot of great lessons were learned, and a lot of good training was given. The 17th District also utilized the beginning of the training session to do a meeting where they indicated that there would be assistance for any PTA in the county that needed it technology-wise, Zoom platform-wise, Zoom connection-wise. So we have those available now to us through the San Mateo County 17th District PTA and the state. I wanted to give a quick update on membership. Our memberships are going very, very well this year. We're actually picking up very, very well. And I also wanted to give just a tiny bit of a shout out to Martin, because Martin is actually having a very, very successful year. And I want to start off their evening tonight from their presentation with some kudos to them for really stepping it up and going for it. With that, that concludes my report for the evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sana. All right, transitioning into the Staff Association representative remarks. South San Francisco Federation of Adult Educators. I do not see anyone, so I'm going to transition to the South San Francisco Classroom Teachers Association. Ms. President Yano.
Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent, President Lujan, board members, cabinet, and school community. Let me start out with some thanks. Thank you to the efforts of Mr. O and the Facilities Department. Now all of our classrooms, I believe, have air purifiers. And because those air purifiers are quite loud, most, if not all of our teachers have microphones and speakers which amplify their voices so they can be heard by the students. Thank you to the HR department for their tireless work at tracing cases and contacts. This is not what they signed up for, but I know that Dr. Spalding and Mr. Siebers are working hard to keep up with that work, which is keeping all of us safe. Dr. Spalding is asking all employees to send in verification of vaccination. Please, teachers and all employees of the district, send that information to HR as soon as possible if you haven't already. Our association appreciates that our administration is doing everything that it can to fight this pandemic. What we don't appreciate, however, is the feeling that we are not being treated fairly or respectfully at the negotiating table. We are currently working on an expired contract. Our bargaining team has been at the bargaining table several times, and the district representatives have been unprepared to negotiate, and we feel disrespected. Our bargaining team is meeting next Tuesday with the districts, and the members of our bargaining team have met many times to prepare for this meeting. They've written sub-plans, and they're ready to negotiate for a new contract. We hope and expect that the district's team will also be prepared. This week, teachers from many schools signed a letter that was sent to Board President Lujan. Let me quote from that letter. A contract is respect for what we do in the classroom every day, every month, every year. A contract is a piece of security in schools that have new COVID cases every week. A contract is an acknowledgement of the absolutely Herculean task of district learning that we, the teachers, created with no direction or support. A contract is an agreement that we, the teachers, will continue to create, reinvent, and revise our courses every year to meet the needs of our students. A contract is an agreement that you, the trustees and cabinet, value the work that we did during the shutdown, the work that we've done to return, and the professionalism we bring to our classrooms and meetings every day. A contract means praise from administrators is genuine and appreciated because it is supported by a contract that values the work. A contract is respect for the profession, for our work, for our passion in helping students become their best selves. A contract is necessary. A raise is necessary. Now is the time. A contract is respect. Thank you.
Thank you, President Yano, for your comments this evening. California School Employee Association, Chapter 197, President Malfatti.
Good evening, President Lujan, honorable trustees, Superintendent Moore, and Cabinet. I too echo Mr. Yanel's remarks about how hard the Human Resources Department and staff there have been working for this COVID tracing. It's phenomenal work and unprecedented amount of stress on everyone involved. My thanks to Dr. Spalding's provided dates for bargaining sessions, and I'm waiting to hear back from my labor relations representative, Dustin Patanad, to confirm those dates, and then we'll be moving forward to the table. As I've always said, I wish to commend our classified school employees, many of whom were on the front lines throughout this ongoing pandemic, which I believe has had a negative impact on staffing levels as well. As you already know, the area has greatly impacted our para-educators and nutrition services. So I'm hoping our district can consider implementing a sign-on bonus to applicants to help with this staffing shortage. This is currently being done in other districts as well. And lastly, I often speak about my admiration for our classified school employees' loyalty and devotion to our school district. And I cannot close this evening without remembering our beloved teacher, Mr. Jim Cresta. His high work ethic and unwavering devotion to his El Camino students and to the field of education over the many years is and always will be admired and unsurpassed. On behalf of all classified school employees, we send our sincere condolences to the family of Mr. Cresta and to the entire staff at El Camino. CSEA 197 would like to make a donation to El Camino High School in honor of this outstanding teacher, Mr. James Cresta. That's my report. Take care, everyone, and stay safe. And I also urge the classified employees who have not been vaccinated to do so. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, President Malfatti. Items from Personnel Commission.
Thank you, President Lujan. At the Personnel Commission held earlier this week on Monday, September 20th, Personnel Commissioners ratified 6 position announcements and 4 eligibility lists. The next Personnel Commission meeting will take place October 18th, 2021 at 5 p.m.
Thank you, Dr. Spalding. This brings us to items from the board. Do we have any announcements or things we would like to share? Trustee Murray.
I went to a Rotary event on the 16th, and their mission statement includes service to others, promoting integrity and advancing world understanding, goodwill, and peace. And they've been a great partner to us over the years. We have Interact Clubs, which is a part of Rotary in both of our high schools. And I wanted to thank them. They just recently went to all of our kindergarten classes and provided each of the kindergartners with a little toolbox for their work. And this is just a little thing. They do so much for us. So just wanted to thank them.
Thank you, Trustee Murray. Okay, not seeing any other items. I believe this brings us to Superintendent's report.
Thank you so much, President Lujan. So first, I'd like to start off by talking about Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. So I wanted to give our community an update on Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, and of course, acknowledge Mrs. Deborah Carlino and her students. And she worked with them and inspired them to engage, to develop a process, to advocate, and most importantly, to make a positive difference in our community and our community at large. In 2017, in Mrs. Carlino's class, a group of 5th graders wanted to find a way to recognize the contributions of Ruby Bridges after learning she had helped integrate William France Elementary School in New Orleans as a 6-year-old. So the students went out and they collected over 1,000 signatures to help bring back to the South San Francisco Unified School District Board of Trustees in hopes that they would identify a day for Ruby Bridges. So as you may know, our school board, as well as the city of South San Francisco and the San Mateo County Office of Education Board all voted and approved November 14th to be Ruby Bridges Days. The youth effort has already gained a lot of significant local traction, with November 14th officially named Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day countywide, and that happened in 2019. Last year, 55 schools across 7 states participated, and recently the day was approved for statewide recognition through a resolution authored by Senator Josh Becker from San Mateo. The state Senate passed Becker's resolution Friday on September 10th with a unanimous bipartisan vote. And we are just so proud that it started in South San Francisco Unified School District at Martin Elementary School. We wanted to congratulate once again our students and our teachers. The next item I have is on vaccination. So earlier in this year, I shared with our community that we would be collecting vaccination status from our staff, and that I would communicate the percents after our September 17th deadline for staff to submit proof of vaccination. So at this point in time, our district has 86.8% of staff who have been able to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination. As you heard earlier, our Human Resources Department have worked tirelessly, sent out a lot of reminders to our staff, and I truly appreciate our community's cooperation. If anyone has not submitted proof yet of your vaccination, or you haven't submitted your proof of a negative COVID test, please make sure that you do that ASAP. I was also going to acknowledge the Rotary, but Trustee Murray already did that. But I just wanted to say thank you. We truly appreciate your partnership and look forward to continuing this effort in the future. At this time, it's my pleasure to invite our ASB students and fall student trustees to share their reports. This evening, why don't we begin with Sam Avila Gomez. She is the fall student trustee and ASB president at South San Francisco High School.
Good evening, President Lujan, Superintendent Dr. Moore, the Board of Trustees, and all of those watching from home. I'm proudly representing South San Francisco High School as ASB president, and as fall student trustee will be here on behalf of all SSFUSD students. I would like to dedicate a moment of silence for Derek Gaines, a 15-year-old Afro-Latino boy who was killed by SSFPD. His birthday was this past Monday, September 20th, and if he wasn't wrongfully executed, he would have been 25. Thank you. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month, everyone. On the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month, being September 15th, our ASB class had flags from all Hispanic countries in our quad area with posters saying Happy Hispanic Heritage Month. As our school is mostly made up of Hispanic Latinx students, we wanted to make them feel at home and felt hanging up flags of their home countries could do so. It was also Central America's Independence Day, so we posted about it on our Instagram story. On September 16th, it was Mexican Independence Day. Our wonderful Alma de Mexico Folklorico program, beloved by everyone in the South City community, performed various dances from different states of Mexico during lunch. Many students gathered at our quad to watch performers dance in various different colors from all different states. A big thank you to all the performers and also Martin, the director, who was able to put this together. Later that day, our folkloric program also performed at City Hall for Mexican Independence Day and Hispanic Heritage Month. This was put on by South San Francisco City Council. I would like to acknowledge how important Ballet Folklorico's program is at South San Francisco High School, not only to students here, but to the community. It has taught many students to be proud of their heritage and is a program that truly built itself, as it only got funding from the state in 2016. But other than that, it has been made by the students in the community. It truly shows how important cultural programs for youth in South San Francisco are and how great our students can be if they have access to them and funding. It's also Suicide Prevention Month, and our ASB class wore purple and turquoise ribbons to bring awareness to suicide awareness. As well as yesterday, our school culture commission put post-its in our school bathrooms with messages like "You matter" and "You are beautiful" and other powerful affirmations in the bathroom so students could read them. We also had a Mid-Autumn Festival Tuesday, September 21st in our quad during lunch. This Mid-Autumn Festival was to mark the beginning of fall. We made lanterns and learned about the Mid-Autumn Festival and its significance in many cultures. It was very heartwarming to see so many students come up and make paper-made lanterns of all different colors and learn about a new cultural tradition many hadn't heard of. Tomorrow is our senior sunrise. It will start at 6:30 a.m., very early, and we will be selling breakfast items. Senior sunrise is when our senior class comes together and watches the sunrise, marking the beginning of their last year together. We are super excited to be back together, and this is the first of many senior memories. We also have a PTSA meeting coming up September 28th at 7 p.m. via Zoom, and the link will be sent out on Schooloop. I encourage all our parents, teachers, and students to join to better support our school community this year. We also had our Club Rush on Friday, September 10th. This is an event in which we have our club set up tables in our big gyms, and students walk around during lunch and join new clubs. It was a successful event, and many students were able to join new clubs. Homecoming season has started. Our overarching theme is cities. Within our homecoming competition, our seniors are representing New Orleans, juniors are New York City, sophomores are Mexico City, and freshmen are Tokyo. Our homecoming dance will be October 16th from 7 to 10 p.m. And we are excited as this is our first dance back from 2 years ago. We have a volleyball tournament. On October 1st at 3:45, we have a volleyball tournament of teams made up of students or teachers, and they will be playing against our girls volleyball team. Admission starts at $3.20 and is $2, and concessions will be sold. There's still time to sign up. You can do so via our Instagram bio linktree, and please support our girls volleyball and ASB class. Again, this will be on October 1st at 3:45, and it'll be in our big gym. Also, please make sure to follow our ASB Instagram as we post all our ongoing events, fundraisers, and updates. That is at SSFHS_ASB. We also finished posting our whole ASB class so you can see who's in our class and what their interests are. For clubs, our Earth Club has been working on an outdoor learning space. It is truly beautiful. The grass area is actually being used as a picnic area by many students. This outdoor learning space will have tables, native plants, and the goal is to eventually grow food there, which we will donate to Mission Meals Change SSF to feed families in the east side of South City. They are in need of funds, so if anyone would please like to donate, click the link in their Instagram bio at ssfhs.earthclub. And Key Club, last Saturday, September 18th, our Earth and Key Club participated in a beach cleanup. Thank you to our South City Warriors who spent 3 hours of their weekend ensuring the Earth is a cleaner space for everyone. As well as our mock trial club is holding tryouts next week. If you wish to try out, you can check out, well, not only students watching this, but you can check out at SSFHS mock trial. Lastly, going on to sports, our girls volleyball is open to anyone as well. Anyone can come to their games. The next home game is Friday at 5:15. And football, today we played Cappuccino High School, and although we did not win, we scored a touchdown, and that's one touchdown to go and one touchdown down and many more to go. Our games are every Thursday at home. It starts at 4 and anyone can come. All we ask is that you please wear a mask. And then also our winter sports are starting up. Both girls and boys soccer have started conditioning, and our girls tennis played one of their first games today. Sophomores and juniors on October 16th will be having a practice PSAT from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. And if anyone wishes to sign up, make sure to see Miss Ward in the CCC for more info. Moving on to complaints and concerns. I've been getting a lot of concerns from teachers about fire season coming up and what the plan will be for students. Will they be I've heard that they have to close doors, but that raises concerns as there will not be fresh air moving in and out of the classroom. I've also heard some concerns about teachers not having a contract with the district. It is my understanding that there is going to be a negotiating meeting next week, and a lot of teachers wish that part of the contract will be the bell schedule. I got a lot of concerns before the meeting for negotiating was put in place, but teachers just want to ensure that they get a living wage, as we are losing teachers to districts because we aren't paying them enough. If we want to stay competitive and give students the best education that they deserve, we also have to give them the best teachers that they deserve, and that's by starting at paying them a living wage. Our EL assistant and programs, we don't have enough EL assistants and translators at South San Francisco High School, and that's where all the EL high school students go. I heard from one of our EL teachers that there were EL assistants that were interested, but the SSFUSD hadn't put the hiring site on, so they weren't able to apply, which made it really rough because we had people that were ready from the summer, but they weren't able to apply for a job until the school year started. And now we have EL teachers begging other students to, translate for Spanish speaking students in the class. So if we had just put up a hiring page, this problem could have been avoided. As well as the need for more nutrition service workers. We have very long lunch lines, and kids are in need of breakfast. They go to school hungry, and sometimes, kids come late and just want to grab a quick snack before they go into class. Also, from our sports teams, I've been hearing that no money has been put into our sports accounts at the high school level, and that money comes from the district. So if we can, get money, because our sports teams do deserve to get the new equipment that they need to be successful. Also, from some concerns that I've heard from El Camino students is that some students are being wrongfully punished for a new TikTok trend going on called Devious Licks, in which students vandalize school bathrooms and school property. And while some students do need to be disciplined for those actions, some students feel that they are being wrongfully disciplined for the actions of others, even though they haven't been doing anything. And some students have also raised concerns that they are being disciplined more than they actually care about things like sexual assaults, where those students that have committed it have not reached any discipline. Also, students for being tested for COVID. Many students have come up to me and told me that they believe pool testing is going in the right direction, but they also raise some concerns that they get a letter from the school saying that they've been in close contact with someone who has been tested positive for COVID, but they're allowed to stay in the school day for the whole period. For example, I got that letter saying that I was in close contact with someone, and I was notified in the middle of a 6th period. And when I asked if I could go home, they said, no, it's okay. That raised some concerns because students felt like if they are in the maybe zone of having COVID, they should be able to go home and get tested as soon as possible, whereas they can stay at school and possibly have it and be spreading it to others. That is all my concerns from SSFUSD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. And just always know that we can sit down and have a conversation. Some of these things I think we can address prior to the meeting. At this time, I am very excited to introduce and reintroduce our ASB president from El Camino High School, with whom we haven't seen for a while, but we are very happy that she is back, Miss Abby Verena.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. Good evening, board members, cabinet, and to our audience at home. My name is Abigail Verino, or Abby, and I am happily serving in my 2nd year as ASB president representing El Camino High School, and serving in my 2nd year as a student board member. Before I begin my report, first and foremost, it is so great to be back, and I hope that you are all doing well and staying safe. Through this next year serving on this board, I hope to continue to serve all students and amplify their concerns so that we may have the best experience within our unified school district. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, our Ballet Folklorico had a performance after school last week to display their beautiful culture, where many students stayed after school to celebrate. Hispanic music is being played every Friday at lunch, and tomorrow, Friday, September 24th, we will be selling conchas from the small business Las Hijas del Gallo for $3. Additionally, our outreach team connected with guest speaker Jackie Garrido, who is a Facebook learning and development leader focused on diversity programming and experiences, alongside of Zoraya Tapia Hadley, who is a manager of public policy for external affairs, and as well as Lizeth Urdiles, who is also an admin specialist at Facebook. These women share their experiences as Hispanic women and how they appreciate and honor their heritage and what it means to be a woman in their culture. If anyone would like to watch their stories, head over to our Culture TV YouTube page, where it will soon be uploaded, or our Instagram at ECHS_cults. So September officially commences homecoming season. Homecoming is a huge tradition at El Camino where students come out with their cult pride and come together as one. Homecoming week officially begins on October 18th to October 22nd, where our freshman to senior class will be showcasing their decorations and skit in light of the theme Disney World. Our homecoming rally is on October 22nd, where classes will be performing their class dances and where we will be revealing the class winners of homecoming. And our homecoming dance is on October 23rd, where we will be awarding our homecoming heroes, a new tradition in replacement of homecoming court, and where class offices will have the opportunity to fundraise for their class by selling food. Our fall sports have kicked off a great season, and we hosted our first Friday Night Lights home football game last Friday against Lincoln High School, and we have another home football game tomorrow with junior varsity at 4 p.m. and varsity at 7 p.m. Our senior class officers will be selling Purple Cow during varsity, and our student store will be selling merchandise. Our girls volleyball, golf, tennis, and our cross-country teams have been practicing under safe circumstances and are continuing to have a great season as well. Our very first athlete of the week for this school year is Mikey Jimenez, who is part of our El Camino varsity cross-country team. Congratulations, Mikey, and keep up the amazing work. All clubs have officially held their first meetings, and in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month coming up, there will be a pink ribbon donation event from Be Kind Club, a Panda Express fundraiser by Math Club, and as well as a continued monthly tutoring. Lastly, Animal Club will continue their metal straw fundraiser from past years, and the funds will be donated to the nonprofit group Ocean Conservancy. I'm also happy to announce that the Student Trauma Open Platform will continue its partnership with a local nonprofit Rape Trauma Services, otherwise known as RTS, located in Burlingame, and that we will move our program from an online setting to an in-person one. Moving on, our House of Representatives will have another meeting next week, announcing our August Students of the Month. Additionally, we will also like to appreciate the students who volunteered for small campus beautification projects earlier this month. We are very grateful to those who respect our campus, despite current negative influences on social media that promote disrespect and destruction of property. We are proud of our students that stand for what is right and not just what is trending. On Saturday, September 11th, our school community lost our legendary teacher, Mr. James Cresta. Mr. Cresta began teaching at El Camino in 1964, and his passing is a tremendous tragedy for our community, as Mr. Cresta taught generations of El Camino students. On Wednesday, September 29th, El Camino will be hosting a candlelight vigil honoring Mr. Cresta at 7 p.m., and we invite all of the board and cabinet members, alumni, South San Francisco families, students, and those who would like to pay their respects. We will be exploring a more permanent way to honor Mr. Cresta later this year, and we are looking at ideas such as a plaque, a bench, and etc. At the memorial, we will present the family with a small binder containing memories and as well as wishes from our El Camino community. Some of these messages include, from a student, Mr. Cresta to me was a very passionate, friendly, and helpful person. He is personally one of my favorite high school teachers at El Camino High School. I was in his autos class during my junior year of high school, and I found a new interest, which was automotives. He taught me everything from the origin of cars, the companies that manufacture them, and the important basics of the car, such as what's in the inside of the engine and battery, to name a few. He also motivated me to help my dad in the garage to fix cars, which I will drive in the future. One of them is a 1965 Nova, which is a custom mod, and a 1968 Camaro, which has a 327 small block engine. Overall, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Cresta for giving me a new outlook and interest in automotives. Another message from a student reads that Mr. Cresta was a wonderful soul to be around. Always smiling, always cracking jokes. You could just genuinely tell that he loved life and was happy to be here to teach students. I was going through a tough time my freshman year, and I had just transferred into Mr. Cresta's class and was failing because I transferred schools. He made sure that I didn't fail and always reminded me to just keep going. Mr. Cresta will be missed and forever remembered by myself and the community, but especially his students and his family. He left a big impact here at El Camino, a legacy. I am proud that I was able to experience meeting Mr. Cresta, our forever Colt. And lastly, from an alumnus from the class of 1991, Mr. Cresta was a lively, brilliant man, kind, a true legend of El Camino High School and in so many of our lives. I can honestly say that I've never heard a negative comment about him. We all grieve with you, but his legacy will forever be a part of El Camino. And with that, I would like to take a moment of silence to honor the legendary Mr. James Cresta. With that, thank you all so much, and may we continue to show the passion in our positions at this district that Mr. Cresta showed in his. If there are no questions or concerns, I would like to thank you all for your undivided attention and conclude my board report.
Thank you so much, Abby. That concludes my report, President Lujan. Thank you.
Thank you. This brings us to the communications portion of the meeting this evening. The public comments that were submitted through the Google form have already been shared with the board and read. To comment during this meeting, you will turn on the raised hand feature. Do want to note that the meeting is recorded and individuals may address the board concerning school business not on the agenda, but public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed by the board unless placed on the agenda at a subsequent meeting in accordance with the law, the Brown Act. The board may request staff to respond orally at the meeting or in writing at a future time. At this time, I'd like to request that attendees who are interested in speaking this evening use the raised hand feature so we can get a sense of how many speakers we have this evening. Okay, thank you for that. I'm seeing 5 hands this evening, which I'm comfortable with doing the 3 minutes for public comments. I want to be mindful that if more hands are raised, I just want to be transparent that we do need to take a break at 8:30. It's so that way our captioner can take a break. So I just want to be transparent about that at 8:30 we do have a hard stop and we'll need to make sure that our captioner has their break. And with that, I shall turn it over to Mr. Siam.
Thank you, President Lujan. Good evening. I'll be calling on speakers during public comment in random order to our attendees. If you would like to speak, you've already raised your hand. On the Zoom meeting platform, attendees that have dialed in can dial *9 to raise their hand. Speakers will have 3 minutes to give their remarks, and you will hear a tone when your time begins, when 30 seconds remain, and when time is expired. Once time is expired, we will move on to the next speaker, and apologies in advance if I mispronounce your name. One moment. Set up the timer. Okay, first speaker is Carney Scold. Please go ahead.
All right, I would like to thank the board for their time. Dr. Moore, for listening. My name is Carney Scold. I am a teacher and a department head for South San Francisco High School. I'm here to speak to you on 3 things: class sizes, retention, and funding. I just wanted to bring to the board and everyone listening the issues we're having at South City. One of the primary things I am seeing in my department is that many of our English learner classes are really suffering from class size issues. One of our newcomer classes had upwards of 35 students in the class last week. This is just unacceptable, especially our newcomers. They really need one-on-one contact with either teachers or paraprofessionals to help kind of get them acclimated to the environment. In our SPED department, we have some classes of SPED that have more than 20 students. In our co-taught classes, we have percentages of more than 50% with IEPs. This makes it increasingly difficult for our staff, both our teachers and paraprofessionals, to help meet their needs. Dr. Moore has praised our newcomers class, but I do want to speak that when this class started, there was no curriculum given to our fantastic new teacher. The EL counselor who helped design the class left last year, and this class is also overburdened with more than 30 students. We really need attention and focus to help us fix this problem. And I encourage the board or anyone watching to come and visit this classroom and see the kind of conditions we're working with. One of our new teachers this year has a class where she has so many students that the student desks are literally surrounding her desk, and it makes it difficult to walk through the classroom. This brings me to my next point, retention. There's a huge amount of pressure on our skilled teachers and our new teachers at South San Francisco. We are understaffed. Many of our teachers are working at 120%, and this honestly creates burnout. Our new teachers often don't know when to say no or how to respect their boundaries, and we have to burn out these new teachers. Our paras need to be increased. When we signed the agreement to have a requirement for an AA degree for our paras, it did not come with any significant pay increase. We really need that pay increase for our paraprofessionals, both bilingual and for SPED, in order to make our school more competitive. And finally, it comes down to funding. I know that we receive federal funding for both our English learners and our SPED departments, and I would like to just speak that South San Francisco High School is suffering. We really need more support considering we get all of the newcomers in the district. Please help us support our newcomer class. I do agree with Dr. Moore that it is a fantastic class, but we do need to keep our wonderful teachers. We need more funding, and we need to limit these class sizes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Alana Wong. Please go ahead.
Good evening, President Lujan, Vice President Richardson, esteemed members of the board, Dr. Moore, cabinet, and those watching from home. My name is Alana Wong, and I teach 6th grade English Language Arts and Social Studies at Westboro Middle School. Also, I haven't got a chance to say it yet, so congratulations, Student Trustee Avila Gomez. I am here today to ask for your respect. I do not expect to be compensated like my software engineer partner who currently makes more than double my salary as his base salary. My expectation is to be respected. While I expect negotiations to take time, I also expect the district to do their part by bargaining in good faith and presenting a plan to be negotiated on. SSFCTA is working without a contract in an ongoing pandemic, with staff expected to adjust and innovate to new, challenging situations every day while we are drastically understaffed, particularly with our support staff, like paraprofessionals, substitute teachers, and nutrition services workers. In these difficult and uncertain times, a contract is security and a sign that the board respects us and our work. As I remind my 6th graders frequently, respect consists of both words and action. There is a bargaining meeting next week. I expect to hear from SSFCTA's bargaining team that the district presented a plan, because that is how the board can act to respect us and our work. I would be thrilled if the district has a plan that brings my salary significantly closer to my software engineer partners, but I will settle for being respected and having a plan for our negotiating team to discuss at all. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nida Courier-Herzala. Give me one moment. I lost my timer. Okay. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Nida Courier-Herzala, and I'm a junior at South City High School. And today I have a couple concerns that I would like to discuss. First, the speakers on the away side of our football field were never installed properly and they don't work. People have been advocating for them to be installed properly since the field was first built, but no one has ever taken the initiative to actually make changes about it. And this is a really relevant issue now because our rallies are now taking place on the football field. Our rally commission and ASB here do so much work to make our rallies entertaining and help bring the school together. And when half the school couldn't even hear anything, it's like a big slap in the face because they worked so hard and put everything they had into this rally. And due to improper equipment, people didn't appreciate it. It left a really bad first impression of South City culture, as most of the people at this rally, or half of the people at this rally, were freshmen and sophomores, and this was their first rally ever. Also, the speakers at El Camino are installed properly and they work, so that makes it even more upsetting that ours don't. Additionally, I would like to speak on the salary of our teachers here. My mom is a teacher in the South City district, and she is always on her computer at home, working on lesson plans and grading and doing everything she can to make her class fun for the kids. And all this time she's spending on this, she's not getting paid for, and I just don't think that's fair. Also, at South City, we've lost so many amazing young teachers who've really made a difference in their time here because they didn't get paid enough to support themselves. We still have some really great teachers here, and I know myself, as well as many others, would hate to see them go, especially for a reason such as being unable to support themselves with their salaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Aaron Hafner. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Aaron Hafner. I'm a math teacher at El Camino High School. I teach math and computer science, as well as run the after-school math lab to help struggling students. I have one request. It's a request I've been making for the 6 years I've been at the district. I would like air conditioning for the 40s at El Camino High School. Our classrooms hit the upper 80s to mid 90s during the summer months, into October sometimes even, making it hard to teach, hard to learn, and hard to just focus in such an environment. I see students struggling to breathe sometimes, and during the first forest fires, I saw 3 asthma attacks between 2 students trying to keep smoke out of my room. Every year I ask, and I've even gotten 2 approvals to look at AC before the facility director left the district. It's getting harder and harder to deal with this every year, and finally I've decided to talk to you guys to see if you can help me. Now I've got another thing to face, COVID. So between COVID and the smoke, I need to decide what my students have to deal with every day. When the smoke starts coming in through my doors and my windows, I'll have to decide, do I shut them and keep COVID in the classroom, or do you keep them open and trade COVID for the smoke? So I hope you hear my plea and you start looking at air conditioning for the 40s, so we don't need to figure out what we're going to do. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rachel Estrada. Please go ahead.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, members of the board, Dr. Moore and the SSFUSD community. I'm a teacher at Spruce Elementary School, and with the negotiation meeting next week, I am speaking tonight on the need to give your teachers a raise, and one that is reasonable and deserving. I love my school, I love the community, and I take great pride in teaching for a living. I say for a living, but here's the thing, I'm not making a living wage here. This is not feasible. I have 2 young children who I have in childcare, which is not cheap. I have rent to pay, which is not cheap. And I would love nothing more than to buy a house in the Bay Area, which you know is not cheap. I want to stay at my school. I want to stay in the district and in the Bay Area. It would be devastating to me to have to move from here just to make a comfortable living. In order to keep qualified and talented teachers, I'm begging you to please compensate us reasonably for our work. Most of us really want to be here, but simply put, we are not able to stay. We might not be able to stay here in the district if we can't afford it. Thank you so much for considering, and I yield my time.
Thank you. President Lujan, that was, one more person just raised their hand. Brenda Gonzalez. Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brenda Gonzalez, and I'm a student at South City High School. And I'd like to also talk about some of our concerns. So one, the breakfast program. I know that we're short-staffed, but that not only has taken a toll on the breakfast program, but also our lunch. The lines are extremely long, and often students don't even get time to eat their lunch. So if we need more staff members, I'd encourage you to give them a pay raise. One, because they deserve it, and two, because students need access to breakfast and ample time to eat their lunch. So, and second, I'd really like to urge you to please listen to our teachers. They really need a pay raise, and need I remind you that some of y'all are making six-figure salaries, while the teachers are asking for like the bare minimum that you bargain with them so that they can simply make a living here. As a student, I know like the value of teachers that stay. So we need better teacher retention, and your students and teachers need the support. So please do your job. Lastly, I'd also like to thank Sam for letting the community and the board members know about our concerns. Keep doing what you do. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you. Okay, President Lujan, that was the last speaker.
Thank you to our speakers this evening. Appreciate the comments. We now transition into the presentation portion of our meeting this evening. Our first presentation this evening is the teaching and learning presentation from Martin Elementary School. Principal Jonathan Cavacha will share with the board educational priorities and programs at Martin Elementary School.
Good evening.
Good evening once again.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Cavacha. Just going to introduce you real quick. We're going to have a presentation from Principal Cavacha from Martin Elementary. Good evening, Principal Cavacha. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Irish, and thank you for driving the presentation tonight. Good evening once again, President Lujan, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Moore, Cabinet, and community members. It is with great pleasure that I'm here with you tonight and have the opportunity to be able to share with you some of the great work and stories from our school. Next, please. Educating resilient learners through collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity with awareness that each of us can grow and improve each day. Our main focus continues to be in our ability to grow and improve so that we can be a better version of ourselves at the end of each day. Next, please. Our school mission is aligned to the district's LCAP goals and priorities, focusing on being able to move the needle in the student learning by making academic achievement, professional development, student and parent engagement the center to all of our school planning, decisions, and actions as stated in our school single plan for student achievement. As for our school district's priorities, as a way of bolstering professional learning and collaboration is through the building of systems within our district and school site, such as embedding collaboration time during early release Wednesdays for both site and district-wide. This allows our staff to be able to carve time for professional learning during work hours. In our school site, we have designated opportunities to learn together and also build leadership capacity from within. Through our breakout sessions where staff are able to lead the learning sessions that range from technology use, reading strategies, EL strategies, and build their social emotional learning program. Next, please. The infographic that we see here with our district #BelieveCAR shows how we can fulfill our commitment to our community. CAR stands for communication, achievement, and relationships. In my presentation tonight, I will share with you how we're able to support student learning as we use the different systems we have in place. From the RTI process that we have, which acts as the gas tank for our system and how we're able to monitor the progress of our students. The mirror, which enables us to reflect and adjust our professional practices to better support our students. And to the steering wheel that allows us to steer our school programs in the right direction as far as supporting our program goals, guided by data that we're able to gather. Next, please. Speaking of our students, here is a quick snapshot of the Mighty Meters this year. There are a total of 353 students this year, and 2 students participating in our virtual independent study. About 48% of our students are English language learners, with 12 students being designated as newcomer students since they have been in our country for less than 12 months. We have 30 students who met the state's criteria for reclassification and are currently receiving support in their transitional years from English language learner designation, and 48 students with IEP who are receiving mild to moderate special education support. According to the state's definition, any student accumulating 10% of absences is considered as chronic absenteeism. This means the numbers that we see here show students who were absent at least 2 days out of the first 20 days. In looking at our data, our Hispanic Latino student group had the highest number of 104 students with at least 2 absences, again, the first 20 days of school. We need to keep in a couple of things in mind as to why there's a big difference compared to other student group. The first is that our Hispanic Latino student group makes up 88% of our student number. And there were other circumstances to consider with the first few weeks of school, such as some of our families having to transition back to in-person learning, where some started the year a day or 2 later than the first day of school. 13% of absences are attributed to COVID-related cases. This will include students who had to quarantine for testing positive, students who had to quarantine from positive case contact, and students who, for abundance of caution, stayed home until they were able to verify that what they were experiencing was either just the common cold or common allergies. For this year, one of the old saying that we're adhering to is, the best ability is availability. In order for that to happen, we need to, as a community, continue to support each other by making sure that we're healthy, minimizing cases where students in classes have to quarantine by making sure that we're able to complete health screening at home, wear masks indoors, proper self-hygiene such as washing hands, and participation in the optional weekly COVID testing. Next, please. We are eager to see the results of our literally assessments as the team continues to complete the first round. This allows us to assess our students' reading level, allows us to screen for reading difficulties, and monitor their progress throughout the year. As we wait for the latest data for tonight, I want to share with you last year's results. In looking at the progress of our 1st to 5th grade graders between the first and second trimester, we see that out of 311 students, 270 students showed gains in the reading level. We're very proud of our students as they were able to continue learning despite distance learning. Next, please. When we look at the overall progress and compare the reading level from first trimester to third trimester, we're able to see the hard work of our students and staff bearing fruit as they were able to demonstrate growth in their reading. The number of students showing gains in reading increased to 296 students. Next, please. In looking at the overall LPAC summative performance scores for Martin, which measures the growth of our English language learners, we're able to see the trend for the last 3 years. This type of data is an example of what we're able to use to guide the development of our school goals and action plans. We're able to see EL levels of our students in each grade level. And from here, teachers are able to group the students for targeted instruction and support through designated ELD time, which is a protected time during the school day where teachers are able to provide lessons tailored for English language learners that is appropriate to their current EL level. Our district EL TOSA, Ms. Tapia, has been very helpful in terms of being able to help us with LPAC initial and summative assessments, as well as being able to provide professional development for our teachers to help them with EL matters. Next, please. We aim to return to our regular schedule of holding 3 RTI meetings, which allows us to maintain our progress monitoring for our students. In these meetings, we go over several data points such as English language development progress, reading and math levels, and for the younger students, we're able to go over their progress with their numbers, alphabets, and identify different sounds they're able to put together. We also go over non-academic information such as their health and social emotional progress. Data gathered from this meeting is what we base our decision-making in terms of creating support plans for our students to be able to determine whether they need reading support with our reading specialists, or depending on their individual learning plan status, perhaps making a decision whether the team needs to move to holding a student success team meeting for possible higher level of supports, such as having to go through an assessment to see if they qualify for special education support. Next, please. Other possible supports that we provide our students is with our counseling team in partnership with YSB and Star Vista. They're able to meet with our students in both individual or small group settings, depending on the support they need, such as helping students with organization, building more effective communication skills, and improving different aspects of their social emotional skills. This year, we're also receiving support to bolster our school-wide social emotional learning with the support of our district TOSA with Ms. Lonergan. She was able to visit our school during lunch and observe how we were supporting our students during recess time. So far, Ms. Lonergan has been able to provide professional learning also for our noontime supervisors, and also helped out with our PBIS focus on a healthy recess environment. For our students with IEPs, Ms. Wen, our BCBA support, is able to help our teachers and students as she's able to provide and supervise behavioral analysis to help our student learning and teachers in the classroom. Another part of our Tier 1 support is our small guided reading group program, where we're able to provide time in class so that we can help students develop greater understanding and control over their reading process to the development of their reading strategies. The Hour Power also gives us the ability to provide Tier 1 support to all of our students by designated time in class, where students who need more time to practice and time to master specific essential standards. The Hour Power also allows us to have teacher and student conference time. Instead of simply collecting and correcting work and giving the graded work back, the Hour Power allows the teacher and student to have time to discuss and provide feedback with their learning progress. Next, please. Special thanks to our tech department staff and Director Simon for giving us the opportunity to provide one-to-one student technology. Kindergarten to second graders were provided with an iPad, while third to fifth graders Chromebooks as part of their learning tools. This gives us flexibility to assign work through Seesaw, Google Classroom, online components for both Wonders and Math Expression, and other electronic learning platforms such as Flipgrid, RazKids, iExcel, and Study Island. Not only is technology helpful in terms of enhancing the learning opportunities for our students, but it is also an essential part for the continuity of our students' learning. We continue to rely on the digital platform to help us on times where a student or a class might have to go through a period of quarantine time. Next, please. Another use of technology at Martin is during our Monday morning meter announcements, where we combine our Monday morning announcements and monthly community time, where we introduce a special monthly virtue to our students. This gives us the chance to see each other through the Zoom tiles of their classrooms, gives opportunity for our students to have their voice heard and be part of the community time as they're able to lead us with a pledge, provide announcements and presentations for the whole school to be part of. Next, please. We continue to celebrate our students through our Meteor Leaders Award, where we randomly select 7 students each week to mention during our community time. We share with our students the specific positive behavior observed in order for them to hear good examples of what behavior is expected and celebrated in our school. This also provides them opportunity to imitate, to replicate positive behavior. All students who are recognized by their teachers are given a digital certificate so they can also celebrate as a family at home. Speaking of celebration, in case you join us late tonight, we're proud to share with you that after only 4 years since Ms. Carlino's 5th grade class started to honor the courage of Ms. Ruby Bridges, it has now gone to a state level. A couple of weeks ago, Senator Josh Becker, representing Senate District 13, introduced November 14th to the Senate Hall as Ruby Bridges Walk to School in California. We're very grateful for the learning opportunity to our students who are able to be part of the process. and how every year our students are able to engage in conversations regarding civil rights movement and what they can do to be part of the process as we continue as a country to inch forward equality. Next, please. I would like to take this time now to thank a few of our parents who helped our school this year. For tonight, we have a mix of parents who are either supporting our school as noontime supervisors, keeping our school safe, and PTA officers who are helping us with our parent engagement. We want to thank Ms. Beatrice Mendoza. Thank you to Ms. Patricia Cortez. We want to thank Ms. Megumi Isobi. Thank you to Ms. Deborah Linnes. And thank you to Ms. Vanessa Marino. Next, please. And to all our parents who have been very supportive this year, we want to thank you for your continued support. Our commitment to you and your children is very important to us. I also want to express my gratitude to all of our staff members for their courage, dedication, and love for the most important work in the world, creating opportunities for our students. Lastly, I want to thank our leadership team who provides support and guidance for the important work that we do, from our CSEA and CTA leaders to our district administrators and board members. On behalf of the students, families, and staff, we want to thank you for your support, guidance, and encouragement. Martin Elementary has turned 100 years old this year, and we are aiming to have our centennial celebration in January. We will be sharing information and invite everyone in this call to celebrate with us when that time comes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Principal Kovacha. I would like to turn it to my fellow trustees and see if there are any comments or questions this evening. Trustee Murray?
I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was great. You were one of the schools that I saw on the first day, and I always love visiting your schools. I also learned a lot because I knew that Senator Becker was bringing the Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day before the Senate. And so I listened for days and hours until it finally came before the Senate. But I learned a lot about the Senate and how it works and how they introduce things. So that was fun. Anyway, thank you very much.
Trustee Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. Thank you for coming out. It's always been a tradition that when we have Martin before the board, that we would have 2 to 3 rows of bright yellow clad students, and I miss that. I miss seeing our students from the school that I think has the coolest team name in the entire district. I would like seeing the pictures in the presentation of your new facilities that, because of last year's distance learning, this is the first time that they're being used. I'd like to see the sitting on the lawn, the brand new lawn pictures. Glad to have a great community space. And actually, this is the slide I was going to talk about. The 95% students demonstrating growth is fantastic, and it's important, and it's great to see. We can't always have a say in where our students start, but we do control where they go. And I'd just like to thank the staff and the whole Martin family, including the volunteers you just pointed out for their work in getting there last year. And this is all, because these are last year stunts, this is all distance learning, and I'm sure that was not easy at times. There's one thing I like to ask before, whenever I have a principal here about their school. Can you tell us what you're missing that may be in our ability to provide, anything that we can help you out to get you where you're trying to be?
Well, thank you for the question. Again, we do appreciate the hard work that our board members are putting in our school district. And the best way for the board to support school sites is through the continued collaboration and planning that the board has already established with our district leaders. Dr. Moore and her cabinet will be able to share with the board specific site needs that we will have. Through the systems that we have in place, district leaders are in the loop regarding all aspects of our school. So I think just continuing with the level of communication that's already established between our Board of Trustees and our district leaders, that will be the best way to find out what our sites will need. So we will definitely share that with Dr. Moore and the cabinet.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho.
Sorry, Trustee Shea.
Thank you so much, Principal Cavacha. You did a wonderful job, and I really appreciate when you did the presentation and I look back to your school mission, and then everything you do is really tied back to your school mission. I'm so impressed with that. All the strategy and then every slide that you did is talk to the collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and then each of us can grow and improve each day. So it's really speak to the heart, the work you are doing here. So speechless, it's a great job. Thank you. I do have a couple questions. It may not necessarily, I totally agree with what Trustee Baker mentioned about this growth. It's a very impressed progress, and especially in this COVID year, that academic year. So 80% of students making progress, growth in the reading level, and then 95% from first trimester to third trimester making growth in reading level. So and I apologize, I did not ask this in advance. So you don't have to answer, just this is my thinking. So will we know growth in one can be 1 point, whatever that measure, it's a growth, but do we know how are our students on track? Of course, we are in the elementary level, on track in terms of their grade level. Are they on track on the grade level? Because if students start, totally agree with what John said, the growth is what we can control, but we also want to know if they are in second grade, after all the intervention, are they meet the second grade level? So that is one of the questions. I don't anticipate you answer that question, but if you do have.
No, yeah, well, thank you for the question, Dr. Shea. Yes, definitely that's why we focus on the growth. And with our RTI process, it really helps us monitor our students throughout the year to see how far they are, where of course their target will always be on grade level. We do have, a lot of students actually who is on grade level and above or ahead of where the target should be. But you're right. Yeah. So there's definitely a different set of data that we can look at to see exactly where students are as far as, let's just say there's about 70 second graders and how many 72nd graders are actually on grade level. That's also a data that we can, we would be able to look at. So like I said, we are finishing the first round of Literally. And for us, the interesting thing for us to look at first will be, how much did our students maintain during the summer? We know that we have a very comprehensive, summer program, but unfortunately it's not for every student. So we also anticipate that perhaps some of our students might show some learning loss. That's why it's very important for us to get this done as soon as we can, because after that, that'll be one of the data that we use in terms of forming our after school support, which is going to be on top of the tier 1 support that we have in class. But yes, that is one of the set of data that we will be looking at, not only just the growth of the student itself, but how far our students are from the target, which is on grade level.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And just one more question, and I know Dr. Moore mentioned a little bit to me that the disaggregation data down the road, we will have that. So just want to mention that I'm still very excited, waiting for that information. So thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation.
Vice President Richardson.
Thank you.
just briefly to say, Mr. Kovacs, I really appreciate that you get the students started with positive images of themselves. Like your little second grader just had me mesmerized. I mean, she was just to command of the whole room, and I'm just, wow. I mean, she told us when to sit down, and I appreciate that because I don't know what I'm doing sometimes. But this starts right here at your level, the granular level, and I like the fact that you have the IEP students as well, mainstreaming. I mean, this is really important towards this goal because we see our girls are very articulate and everything, and I'm just so happy that they get a good start in our schools early on and continue good work. Thank you. I can hear myself. You guys can't hear me? Okay. I just thought it was just for my work. Thank you. Continued success.
Thank you, Vice President Richardson. Principal Cavacha, I just want to take a moment to commend you. I want to thank you, the staff, the parents, and the students. The commitment to Martin is remarkable. It shows in every single slide, from the thoughtful strategic interventions for students, the careful eye toward data, the focus on developing the whole child, the academic, the social, the emotional, and the way the community comes together and the way you help bring the community together is just heartwarming. And I just want to give my huge thanks to you and the entire Martin community. And I look forward to the 100-year celebration.
Madam Chair, seeing as our next item is likely to take more than the 10.5 minutes we have.
You don't think Mr. O can get through a budget presentation in 10 minutes?
I think you could, but then again, we're going to have to talk too. So I suggest we either, I don't know, leave it to your discretion as president. We either take our break now or maybe just do the consent calendar, since that would likely be brief, and then take the break.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and do consent, and then we can go ahead and transition into our 10-minute break. Okay, so skipping consent with looking forward to coming back to the year-end, skipping two consents. So the following items are submitted for board approval. One motion will authorize action for those items so designated. Are there any items people would like to pull, or do I have a motion?
We don't have to pull it. I can probably ask the question. On the fundraisers, and Sam, you may be able to answer it for me. And one of the fundraisers is, and I'm sorry I didn't say it to you before, but there's a face paint and Polaroid fundraiser. And I'm wondering how that works. Are they going to be like close to the face? They're going to be wearing masks? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so that fundraiser is going to be put on by our Pubs Commission, and they make all our posters. They're our artistic group of our ASB class. And it's just going to be like, basically we're going to face paint, but we'll still have our mask on, and we'll just paint like class colors on, like blue, white. It's just for before the rally, so people can get amped up. And then the Polaroids, we just set up like a poster behind, and then we take pictures of like students, and they get to keepsake it for memories. So yes, mask will be on. We don't take masks off, but they'll be face painting like class colors around the eyes and things like that, with like obviously paint that's made for the face. Yeah.
I was just more concerned.
Yeah,
It'll be
no.
done outside.
Oh yes, it will be done outside. And masks will be on by our Pubs Commission. Yes.
Dr. Trustee Shea?
I'll
yeah.
second.
So a first by Trustee Shea, a second by Trustee Baker. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Okie dokie. I believe we transition into a 10-minute break, and we'll see you in a few. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We are going to go ahead and jump into the business services, a report on year-end unaudited actuals. Staff will present to the board the unaudited actuals financial report, including revenues, expenditures, and ending balances for the 2021 fiscal year.
Okay, thank you, President Lujan. Okay, good evening, President Lujan, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, cabinet, staff, and community members. So I'll be presenting the district's unaudited actuals financial report for 2020-21. This is the report we prepare after we close the books. The report covers the period from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. And the purpose of this presentation is to show you how we ended the school year. Next. Thank you. Okay, these are the areas I'll be covering this evening. I'll go over the education code requirements, the 2020-21 actual revenues and actual expenditures, a general fund summary and a comparison, other district funds and other areas of concern, and then also looking ahead at next steps. Okay, this is the educational code requirements for the unaudited actuals. It requires districts to take the report to the board for approval and submit it to the San Mateo County Office of Education to review for accuracy. Then it is submitted to the California Department of Education. Finally, in later September or early October, our auditors will come to the district to review our books and prepare our annual report or audit report, sorry. So the next couple of slides, I will be covering the general fund actual revenues. The general fund is the district's main operating fund. You can look at it as one of our many bank accounts. I'm going to cover the unrestricted general fund, the restricted general fund, and also the combined amount. So this slide shows our unrestricted general fund revenues. The state requires district to list the revenues using these categories. This way is consistent throughout the state of California. We ended the year with 104.9 million in unrestricted revenues. And the bulk of our revenues comes from LCFF sources, which for our district is the property taxes, because we are a basic aid district. Okay, so this slide shows the restricted revenues that the district received. I have separated the restricted portion from the unrestricted portion because the restricted portion must be used for a specific purpose. They include categorical programs such as Title I, II, III, special education programs, and other parts of federal and state stimulus funds, including the Esser funds. These funds may not be used to provide salary increases to our employees. They need to be used to address their learning loss. We ended the year with about 30.4 million in restricted revenues. Okay, this slide shows the total of all revenue for 2020-21, which is about 135.3 million. And this is the same information from the previous slide shown in a pie chart. Okay, the next couple of slides, I will be covering the general fund actual expenditures. Just like the revenues, I will break down the amounts by unrestricted and restricted. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows our unrestricted general fund expenditures. The state requires districts to group the expenditures into these categories so that it is consistent throughout the state, just like the revenues. We ended the year with 78.6 million in unrestricted general fund expenditures. You might wonder why the unrestricted general fund revenues is 104.9 million and our unrestricted general fund expenditures is only 78.6 million, which is about a difference of 26.3 million more revenue. The reason is that because the bulk of this difference is the general fund contribution to the special ed program, which is approximately 19.6 million, and the state required contribution to the facility maintenance program, about 3.6 million. To cover the restricted expenditures in this area. Next slide, please. For the restricted general fund, we ended the year with 47.7 million expenditures in 2020-21. Next slide, please. The total of all expenditures for 2021 is about 126.3 million. Next slide. And this is the same information from the previous slide showing the pie chart. So the next couple of slides, you will see the general fund summary again, broken down by unrestricted and restricted. You will also see a comparison of the estimated actual and unaudited actuals. Next slide. This is a high level summary of the closing numbers for 2020-21. I have broken them down into unrestricted and restricted again. The ending fund balance before the state required designation and district designation for the unrestricted general fund is about 31.7 million. So below that, about 260,000 is considered a non-spendable, which includes inventory, prepaid items, and revolving items. About 11.2 million below there is the amount set aside by the district for anticipated expenditures, which I will go over in the coming slide. About 6.3 million is the state required designations. Our district is required to set aside 3% of the total expenditures, but we do 5% because we are a basic aid district and need the extra funds for cash flow purposes. The amount remaining at the very bottom is the 13.9 million. This amount is needed to help the district balance its budget in 2021-22 and the next 2 years because the district is a deficit spending, which means the district is spending more than the revenue it takes in. The state requires school district to have a balanced budget for the current year as well as the next 2 years. If you recall, when I presented the 2021-22 adopted budget back in June, I mentioned that we had to remove the 8.5 million for property tax repayment in the destination in order to balance the budget for all 3 years. If we did not have this remaining balance after we close the books, we would not be able to balance our books for the current and the next 2 years. And then the next column, the ending fund balance for the restricted general fund is about 17.2 million. These are the restricted funds that needs to be carried over into the following year and spent for its intended purpose. They are not funds that district can spend as it chooses. This amount is much larger this year due to carryover of one-time unspent federal and state stimulus funds that the district received late in the year. So for example, the expanded learning opportunity grant is about 4.6 million that was carried over. Esser 3 is about 6.2 billion. So some of those are some of the programs that the funds has not been spent and is carried over into the next year. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the district reserve designations. The program carryover funds from prior year additional staffing will be posted into the 21-22 budget, and they will be removed from the designation when you see the first interim. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a comparison of our estimated actuals, what we anticipate our revenue and expenditures will look like when we close the books. On all the actuals, the actual revenue and expenditures after we close the books. We prepare the estimated actuals back towards the end of May when we prepare our adopted budget for next year. This is only for the unrestricted general fund because these funds are not restricted for a specific spending purpose. As you can see, we were very close. There is a fallout of approximately 490,000 after we close the books. Next slide, please. So the district also has other funds. As I mentioned earlier, you can look at them as other checking accounts. The state requires district to track specific expenditures in different funds. For example, nutrition services is tracked under Fund 13. Adult education expenditures is tracked under Fund 11. We also have a new fund in 2020-21, Fund 08 for Associate Student Body or ASB. The state is requiring district to report this any balance for ASB funds starting this year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows some of the areas of concern moving forward. You have seen many of these before in my previous presentations. I have added a few new ones. One-time reduction of property taxes in 2021-22. The district will be losing 4.9 million in revenue this coming school year. This is due to a change in the law and the result of a litigation settlement in the city of Chula Vista versus Sandoval case. Next is the shortage of teachers, nutrition service workers, substitute, and other staff. This is a concern by many school districts. Everyone is having a hard time hiring enough staff, particularly substitutes. Even temp agencies are having the same problems. This may also result in additional costs for the district. Next one is the contribution to other funds to balance the budget. Districts are having to contribute to other funds, such as nutrition services and childcare, in order to balance the budget due to low enrollment and participation in these programs. And lastly, the potential impact of Delta variant on the economy, which may impact our school district. There is still a lot of uncertainty going forward on how this may impact our district. So these are just some of the concerns that we're worried about. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we have the 21-22 first interim financial report going to the board on December 2021 for approval. And the next, after our auditors audit our books and prepare the audit report, we will take that to the board in January 2022. Also, in the same month, the governor will release his proposed budget for 22-23, and I'll be bringing back information to the board to share at that time. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O, for the presentation. Turn to my colleagues for questions and comments. Trustee Shay, do you have anything, or Trustee Baker? You keep.
I don't always want to go first. It makes me look bad. Thank you, Mr. O. A good summary as always. A couple of things. One, I think would be helpful to some members of the board and also people listening in or watching from home about the restrictions on the Esser funds you just mentioned. We do have a decent carryover there. Can you outline some examples perhaps of what we must use those for?
Yeah, that's very good questions. Yeah, the expanded learning opportunity grant Esser funds, a bulk of that needs to be used to address the learning loss. So that's a big portion of it. The Esser funds can also be used to purchase additional, like equipment such as Chromebooks, iPads. If you need it, some of the essential protective equipment like face masks, hand sanitizers. And there's also, you can use that for like mental health. There's a number of uses that in this CTE website actually lists a whole bunch of different items that can be used for that fund.
Right, we have to use it for a specific purpose related to pandemic recovery. We can't just flip it into our general fund, so to speak.
Yes.
Another thing to notice, I did a little of the add up on the unrestricted on page 10, if it helps, Mr. The adding up of the salaries and benefits, we are at 89% as it is. And, we hear about the issues with the capital outlay and old books and such. I just want to point out to those people who have been calling, we are trying to spend as much as possible on our staff who we value. We will need to be creative in upcoming years, I think, where we do. And finally, thank you for your, we have a much larger document in front of us for the public. I don't know if they can see what I'm holding up, but it's an inch thick of the details, and it does compare it what we spent last year in these unaudited actuals to our budgeting for next year, and we are increasing our expenditures, and we do have a risk of unless we get better revenue than we expected, or some other means, we do risk eventually using up those unallocated $13 million?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we're deficit spending in the current and next 2 years. So unless more revenue comes in to help balance that, we're actually draining our reserves pretty significantly.
I think, I mean, that's something to keep in mind, and that we are keeping in mind as we move forward. I realize it's more statements than questions, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Trustee Shea? Thank you. Does Mr. Irish, you want to say something? Oh, thank you. So thank you so much, Mr. O. Always a very precise and very clear presentation. Give us the big picture idea about our budget situation. There's one thing, as the public is listening, I would like to ask you to articulate a little bit of since we are basic aid, so our revenue is not coming from student headcount. And so in the area of concern, we have the declining student enrollment. Can you articulate that? So
yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, like you said, the bulk of our revenue comes from LCFF funding, which for us is property taxes because we're a basic aid district. So about 10% of the district in California are basic aid district, which means they receive the bulk of their revenue from property taxes. So even though we get the bulk of that from property taxes, we also impacted if our enrollment declines. For example, there's some funding like as a lottery and some of the one-time stimulus funds. They depend on the number of students we have or headcount in the district. So if we have declined too much, we're also losing those revenues. So it does impact us when we decline enrollment. So we kind of like it to keep it steady, not decline too much. So that way we take advantage of these one-time stimulus fund and as well as lottery and other funding as well too.
Very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice President Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. O. You just make it sound so easy, but it isn't.
Thanks.
And, I see the money and we just never have enough, but it goes so fast. And like you said, they're restricted and we need to spend it in the way that we were told to spend it, and we just can't shift it over to the salary section. So I want to just clarify to the public that if there was extra money, this board and our administration are happy to give it to our well-deserved staff. We just lost a lifelong member who just of our staff. So, there's some dedication, and that's valuable to some of us and to me actually. And it speaks to the greatness of a district. So I just want to make sure that people understand that if there's money, we will spend it and spend it on the ones that are making, this place a nice place to be for some teachers, and I appreciate it. So thank you, Mr. O, for making it.
You're welcome.
Being careful.
Thank you.
Trustee Murray?
Yeah, I just want to thank you and your team for putting this together. As I was going through it, it's like so scary to me. It's just frightening to look at. But I'm glad we have you at the helm because you make it look so easy.
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, just a lot of uncertainties, going forward. I mean, not just for our district, but every district. Yeah, thank you.
Student trustee Abula Gomez?
Hi, sorry if this is a silly question,
Okay.
but do teachers have a say in any of like the funding that's totaled out from the general funds? Like, does our negotiation team have like a say in this, or is that what's going to be part of the contract coming up?
Well, a lot of our expenditures is continue year after year. For example, newcomer programs, middle college, so a lot of them carry over from year to year. But occasionally we also add based on feedback from the community, like counselors and, So we add the additional staffing. So, so it changes, but, depending on the program, because some of the program, like for example, Esser 3, they ask us to get feedback also from the community and staff. So that's what Mr. Irish actually held those meetings, but so it depends on what type of funding. We have over 250 plus different programs. So it depending on the funding source.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. O, for the presentation and honest, not fun, but honest look at the budget. It's a little bit bleak, but appreciate you presenting it in a way that is easy to understand. I did want to touch on one thing under the areas of concern. One of the things you stated in that was that the shortage of teachers, nutrition service workers, substitutes, and other staff is an area of concern for the budget. Part of that is honestly just wear and tear on our staff and people being taxed. I was wondering if you could expand upon a little bit as to why that's also an area of concern for the budget, in terms of how if there's paraprofessionals that we're unable to fill, how are we filling that and how does that impact the budget?
Yeah, that's a very good question, President Lujan. So, when we have a shortage of staff, we try as best as we can to go out to, different sources. So one of the sources like third party, temp agencies, and they charge, they know that there's a high need there. So they charge you outrageous amounts, right? So when they do that, it impacts our budget, which is additional cost to our budget. So that's why I put that as another area of concern.
Thank you, Mr. I appreciate you speaking to the question.
I was just going to add to that. So for example, with a third party para, if we hired internally, once we go outside, it's 3 times the hourly rate. So that's part of the impact.
That's a good point.
Thank you both very much. And thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated. Okay. So now we skip over consent because we already did it and we transition into the information discussion portion of our meeting this evening. Our first item this evening is a discussion on returning to in-person board meetings. The board will discuss the timing for returning to in-person board meetings at Baden High School gym.
Thank you so much, President Lujan. So at the onset of the pandemic, Governor Newsom signed an executive order. And that executive order allowed public agencies to conduct meetings virtually without having to comply with certain provisions of the Brown Act. There certainly needed to be a way for people to observe and people to participate in the meetings. Initially, this was only intended to last as long as physical or social distancing was required by the state or local health agencies. But the governor signed another executive order in June 2021, and he extended these flexibilities through September 30th, 2021. And so as effective October 1st, and at the time that I wrote this memo, it was if this executive order gets extended, public agencies are no longer required to stream or accept remote comments at meetings. And so our school board on May 27th had a robust conversation about transitioning back in person. And at the time, our board was supportive of maintaining Zoom as a platform and the ability to stream so our community can stay engaged and informed with what's happening. And during that meeting, there was a majority of our board discussed that when transitioning back to in-person at Baden, they'd like to also transition public comments back to being in person as well. And they agreed to maintain written public comments being submitted in advance of the meeting. At that meeting, the board also indicated a need to come back, have further conversation to decide when we wanted to transition. And when I say in person, initially it was us staff and school board coming in person. And now the conversation is board, students, community, cabinet, all of us transitioning back to in-person meetings as though it was pre-pandemic. And so tonight's item is to give the board an opportunity to discuss whether or not the board believes that we are ready to transition back to full in-person meetings. I will note there is an assembly bill that essentially says we need school districts and public agencies need to transition back to in-person meetings. And if there's a desire to continue with remote meetings, I can tell you some of the implications of that assembly bill that the board will want to take into consideration. But with that, I will turn it over back to you, President Lujan, to engage the board in a discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Look to my colleagues.
Thank you, President Lund. You know, part of my day job is outreach to local governments in San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, Monterey, Santa Cruz counties. And I end up basically going on to a lot of city council, county supervisors, occasionally other school boards meetings. And I'd say right now it's about 60-40 that these other agencies have a in-person with a remote component, not allowing, you know, the similar to us, but with a small audience in chambers. You know, I'm under no illusion that this pandemic is over. I do think we've turned a corner in terms of immunizations and such, that we can allow a little more in space. My concern, as I said in May, is that I would, you know, for the foreseeable future, regardless of whether Alex Lee's bill passes, that we can maintain and means to remote communicate with our public, whether in person or not. Every agency I've seen has still at least a hybrid and doesn't just limit speaking to those in the chambers. So I'm agnostic. I mean, to be honest, if it was up to me, we'd probably still be sitting in our homes doing this. But you know, I am also willing to show that, you know, hey, if we're making our students go back, we should be able to meet in person too. My just concern is I would like to maintain some means of remote public input for the time being.
Trustee Murray? Yeah, whether we come back or not, you know, I'll be here. But I was thinking that maybe we shouldn't have open up to the public until like January. Then we get over the hump, the flu and if there's going to be more cases of COVID or an increase in cases of COVID as it is like during the winter. But when we do come back, I do think that when we have public comment, that they should come to our meetings. It should not be via Zoom or anything like that. One of the things that I've read or that I've learned over the years is that one of the rules of personal communication is that 7% is the spoken word, 38% is the voice and tone, but 55% is body language. So you lose a lot of nuance, you lose a lot of what people are trying to say. You lose a lot of what people are trying to say when you don't have them in person. So that's.
Thank you very much, Trustee Murray. It's so polite. Everyone's taking their turns. I love it.
Thank you. Personally, I don't have any strong preference. So I'm go with the flow. Thank you.
If you, can I interject just for a second? So this bill is expiring October 1st, the executive order. So you're going to see many boards transitioning back to in-person. So that's really what it's about, right? There's no hybrid model anymore. And so let me give you a little bit more information. So under this new assembly bill, if the legislative body says we still want to meet remotely, then all rules go back to teleconferencing pre-pandemic. So the Teleconferencing Brown Act expectations and rules. The board also has to, and prior to October 1st, has to proclaim a state of emergency, indicating that it is unsafe for the school board and public to meet in person, right? So that's part of the expectation. That has to happen by majority vote. And then when the legislative body holds a meeting and during a proclaimed state of emergency by majority vote, then that would mean that meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health and or safety of attendees. So we have to think through, we're all meeting here, staff is here, students are coming every day. that if we want to continue in remote, these things have to be in place. It also indicates that local agencies will have to put an item on the agenda of a Brown Act meeting once every 30 days to make findings regarding the circumstances of that emergency. And that is essentially getting to a place where you're saying it's still unsafe for us to be in person. And again, you have to vote to continue relying upon the provision for teleconferencing procedures in lieu of in-person meetings. So it's not just we get to decide if we're remote or not. It comes with a lot of expectations, but in a meeting that I had earlier with the county superintendent, many boards are transitioning back to in-person because this is a lot of extra steps that the local agencies will have to implement. And so I'll just give you one last example. I know President Murray, I apologize, Trustee Murray, you have something to say. But in talking to the county superintendent and high school and unified school district superintendents earlier this morning, many of them are transitioning back to in-person with a caveat if there's a concern about safety, having people show proof of vaccination to gain entry into the meeting or proof of a negative COVID test. And so that is something that can be done. That is what the county is doing. And that is what she recommended to many of us at the meeting so that we can mitigate it against any health and safety concerns.
Oh, that sounds perfect. then. October it is.
I do have a clarified question. When you say in person, right now we are not in person. When you say in person means public in person.
Pre-pandemic in person.
Got it. Okay.
We have our kids going into classrooms and sitting in the classrooms next to each other. I don't have a problem meeting a baby and having us in a building together.
I'm sorry, I think Vice President Richardson, you were, and I jumped in, so I apologize.
Well, I asked to have this item placed only for a practical purpose. As you know, I have a hearing loss and I found it very difficult to understand people through their masks. And I had at least some people had said, because if it wasn't for the captions, they too would have a difficulty picking up some of our speech during the meeting. But when we go back, I kind of like seeing everybody. I enjoy it. I love chatting with our student board members, but I was wondering, when we go back, do we have to wear our masks?
Yeah, so the California Department of Public Health has already indicated that anytime you're on a school campus, you have to be masked. Correct.
Okay. Well,
We still have to follow the same health and safety guidelines.
oh, is that what it is?
Student trustee Abdullah Gomez.
Sorry, just a clarification question. So that means that if we go back into person, we'll have like no more big TV, like people won't be able to do public comment via like a live Zoom.
So possibly. So when we go back, there will be a TV because that's the way that we live stream to YouTube.
Yeah.
The conversation, as you heard initially, was to decide when we transition back, do we continue? I think we've all agreed we want to continue to live stream.
Mhm.
The conversation is, do we want to continue accepting public comments virtually or public comments in person? The last time the board met, there was a majority that said they preferred having people come and speak in person.
I would just like to give an opinion on that. I think we could do like both in person and then for those that are comfortable and having a proof of vaccination or a negative test and having social distancing, it seems like the way to go for in-person meetings. But I think also I've been going to board meetings for like a year and a half now, and I've heard numerous public comments in which you can hear like people, babysitting, you can hear children in the background, you can hear them, doing things. And I think part of Zoom was having it being accessible to a lot of people. Not everyone can hire a babysitter to go to a board meeting and give a public comment. And I think hearing their in-person voice and, hearing, what they have to say is very important. And I think that's just, I don't think that we should take that element away. I think if people can go to in-person meetings, that's great. That's awesome. But I also think, there's a large population of our public that, can't always show up to a board meeting, but still wants to share through their voice. Even if it's not written and they want to speak it, actually, I think we should still have that accessible.
One thing real quick though, thank you. Everybody else is virtual. I mean, I just went to the personnel board meeting the other day and they're sitting wherever and one of them lives on a boat. You know what I mean? Why do we have to be here? I don't mind it, but I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying?
It's the law. The law will go into effect October 1st. The law is changing. And that will go, yes, and that will go into effect October 1st. That's why you can probably still see things like Personnel Commission happening virtually, but every body is having this discussion right now.
With all due respect, if people are babysitting or whatever, we will keep the email so that they can email, they can get their word out to us, they can get their message out to us. But as I said, I know for me, it's really important to see the people and so that's me.
I mean, I agree that, there is a nonverbal element to communications, but, and my colleague posted some statistics, I will say that 104% of statistics are made up. No, just kidding. But, I agree with our student trustee Gomez, Avila, that, our meetings online the past year and a half, almost, year and a half, have brought us a wider range of not only opinions, but demographics. We have more students than we ever had, unless there was like I mentioned earlier, Martin coming in and speaking. I would miss that extra input. Whether it's the law or not, I do think we should come back to inviting people in. Like I said, a slim majority of other agencies I do see are already doing that. But I do really think that we should have some sort of remote access. We have Vice President Richardson mentioned the captions. We have it's easier to do live translation that way. We are not only making it more accessible for people who can't physically be there, but more accessible in terms of people who are hard of hearing, people who have English as a second language. So there are numerous reasons I think that we should keep some ability to remote comment.
I think we should continue to stream it. And I think one of the things that we did learn during pandemic is that the captioning is good. And actually, we probably, with the translation, we probably get more people with the translation through the computer than we ever did like in person. And I remember the machines were always messing up and everything. So I think we should continue to stream. I think we should continue to keep it accessible to everybody. Anybody can watch our meetings. And I think that if they have comment and they can't come in, we're allowing them to continue to email us. And so we're getting that information, their information. But for me, when it's not the same. When I hear, we see the number 3 minutes and 1 second, and it goes down, and we hear them talking, but we're missing a lot of what they're saying, I think.
So I do have a question for Dr. Moore. Does the law okay with the remote, the public right now, the way we are doing?
Yes, they're new expectations for how you do that. In terms of how, if you ask people to raise their hand and they don't raise it in the right amount of time, there's a new expectation about what you have to do. There's an expectation if you are still doing remote, I think people can still email in and give their input, but the challenge is just trying to do both, because you have to be there. Essentially, you're either going to declare the emergency or not. But I still think there's an opportunity for people to write in. That certainly is acceptable. And I think if the board decides that you want to also do remote public comments, that is also going to be acceptable. We would just then need to follow the guidance.
Thank you. Student trustee Avila Gomez.
Again, with all due respect, I'm just a little bit confused on, yes, we can get emails and things like that, but again, we're losing that element of hearing their voice. Like at the same time, if we're talking about the statistic, like, yes, we don't see them, and yes, we don't, like, we're not able to read their body language, and they're not there with us like physically, but wouldn't that we be losing more if we just limit them to emailing? I don't know. I feel like in this past year and a half, I personally wouldn't have been able to do as much public comment. A lot of my peers at South San Francisco High School, and to be honest, there is an element. I mean, throughout, like, every time that I encourage someone to give public comment, it does make them nervous. It's a little bit nerve-wracking to come up to the board. And sometimes it does help them that their camera is off. But I just think that that's also important because we're teaching our students to, use their voice to actually, even if they're not there physically, they're actually like using their voice. They're able to speak publicly, which I think is an important life skill to teach our students to public speak. So even in that, there's important lessons that we're still able to teach remotely. And I also think, we'll lose a lot through that, especially because our board meetings, I mean, what time is it? It's like 9 o'clock right now. Our public comment is earlier, but how many kids can get a ride to Baden at 7 o'clock? We lose that element too. So making it accessible, again, the live streams, the subtitles, the translation, I agree that they should all be continued for our meetings done in person.
Trustee Murray.
I agree. You miss some nuance when you read an email as opposed to talking to somebody. I can tell you that I get nervous every single time I come to a meeting, every single time I talk at a meeting. And an important life skill is to be able to get past that and still do it, because that's the importance of having your voice heard, actually going out and doing it, even though you're nervous. I think we have had a lot of student interaction in the last year, but we had a lot of student interaction the year before the pandemic, when there was an issue that was important to our student population. They came in, and as for me anyway, it's more important to see them. Emails, I can't tell you how many times we've gotten either anonymous emails, which means that the same person can and has sent us several different emails. The same person that emails us oftentimes comes and talks to us at a Zoom meeting. So I prefer to have everybody come forward and speak with us at a meeting. But some people can't, and so I'm saying that an email would be fine. But for me, I think that it's important for people to come forward and say what they have to say in a public forum.
I do want to point out just a couple things that I think are relevant to this discussion. And one is, I found in my day job that the trend prior to the pandemic was to allow more means of remote access. I'm granted I work for a statewide agency and not everyone could go up to Sacramento or San Francisco, but the trend is going towards allowing more remote public comment in general. And point two is, if we are streaming anyway, meaning we have cameras, we have the screens, the district has and had a Zoom account prior. This is not going to give us any additional physical costs if we're going to if we're going to stream anyway. So I think, yeah, I understand there's some nuance, but my preference would be to allow remote public access just in general. And then this might be something, you know, if we hadn't had the pandemic, we might have been talking about anyway. So. Well,
Dr. Moore, just for clarification, if we allow for remote public comment, do we need to declare do we need to declare an emergency because we are still allowing for some form of teleconferencing?
Let me double check that while you all continue the conversation.
Thank you, I appreciate it, because that does kind of impact my thinking on it a little bit. I will say that my preference would be in-person comments. And I say that thinking about the facilitation of the meeting. I have personally been not nice things have been said to me because I look at how many hands are raised and I know we have a break coming. I'm allowing for an hour of public comment and I make the option, which is within my it's allowed to limit public comment to 2 minutes. And then I've received many comments about how it was very rude that I limited them. Thinking about navigating that in concert with all the public comment cards would be a lot to manage. So I definitely we are accessible. I do read every single email that comes in. I do listen to every single comment. I do think that there's something that's been lost when I can't make eye contact with the person who's making public comment.
So I think, were you done? Apologize. I think we will not have to declare an emergency for that piece, but I appreciate you saying that because we also have staff that facilitate the meetings. And it's extra work for them to try to facilitate Zoom and the in-person technology and supports. And so it's another consideration for the board. To have to manage both is a challenge to our team.
Honestly, I think that, I mean, it's not rocket science, is it? I mean, we kind of facilitate two things, but we wouldn't, if we had a snafu or something, a break in the streaming and stuff, that would set us back. But couldn't as board, we monitor our own comments so we don't have to have the staff in there? I mean,
No, unfortunately, no. We have our technology staff, and as we've seen, we've had some challenges and they have to intervene. Having to manage online. We have people physically, we have to manage that and that timer in the moment. Remember, I don't know if we remember, but we have our own board timer for people that are in person speaking. So it's just a lot of moving parts.
I can't speak to the technology because, you know, as you could see, I depend on it myself to be part of this meeting. So I have to say, but I totally agree that I would like to, you know, have access to the public and the public have access to us. It just, you know, when we, like I said this before, I said, when we acknowledge the students, this is what we're doing. We take that little picture with their little, that's a big moment for them. And I think it's missing.
And that can still happen when we have a presentation. Those kids can still come in. You know, I see it done. I know it. I realize it's extra work. I think the benefits of additional public comment make us more outweigh the negatives of having to do both. I think it gives us a more representative sample. I don't know if any, actually, I think pretty much all of us have been to a city council meeting prior to Zoom and seen that the audience is not representative of the community. You know, there is a certain part of people who go to these meetings that do not are, you know, but you know, we serve primarily parents of young, we serve children, we serve their families, you know, who can't. I took my then 7-year-old daughter to a council meeting once. It was miserable for her, but I felt I had to be there. but I would rather have made that comment at home. And, maybe the next meeting I don't make that comment because, I don't want to upset my children's schedule. And it might be undermine my own argument. I do probably give more credit to written words, signed written words than public comment. But, I do also think that people would, at least, not everyone is comfortable emailing either. So.
I think, I'm sorry. Okay. I think also we need to ask ourselves, like I hear out all the people saying, it does take much more, it does take much more work, which I acknowledge. I'm so thankful to everyone that's helping set up the systems so we can have Zoom meetings. But I also think we have to realize, like, are we willing to limit the voices of people who are underprivileged and can't come to board meetings sometimes? Like, I feel like those are the voices that we need to hear the most. And honestly, for me, sometimes it's easier to just give a 2-3 minute public comment than, sit down, write a full email. I think when we limit the voices that can't come in and just say, well, just write an email, we're kind of shutting down the voices that we need to hear the most as a board. As we're saying, I think it was Trustee Baker that said it, doing Zoom meetings has broadened how many people come, how many more students come, the different demographics, ethnicities that come. So are we really are we going to try to limit that? Are we going to try to put an end to that when those are the voices that we need to hear the most?
I think what I'm saying is when I am listening to somebody looking at the 3-minute timer and I'm listening, I'm not really hearing everything they have to say. It doesn't mean as much to me because I don't see them. Oftentimes when you go in person, your passion is there and you can see in the person's face and in their body language, wow, this is really important to me. And I think we miss that. We just, and quite frankly, sometimes people call in and they call in for one reason and then they hear people before them and then they say, oh yeah, by the way, teachers need a raise. Oh yeah, by the way, this, or oh what, yeah. So you're missing, if you're passionate about something, if something is important to you, you go to the meeting, you give your public comment, and it's not like adding all these extra. A lot of people, when they, in the past, when they've come to our meetings, they have their speech written up and they sit there and they stand at the podium and they read it and there's something to be said for that. That for me, that's what I see, and and I think, as I said before, that that's a skill that we should teach people, how to advocate for what you want. You don't hide behind a computer and say whatever it is. You come to the meeting and you advocate for yourself.
Trustee Baker.
My final thoughts, because I'm sure someone's going to call for the questions. AB 339 is on the governor's desk right now, which require that. Now, granted that right now only applies to cities and counties with populations greater than 250,000. But I suspect that once it is, assuming Governor Newsom signs it, once it's in effect, you're going to be seeing the call for it to go to smaller levels of government. So, I mean, we either continue or we don't continue, and probably in a year from now, we'll have to start it up again. I'd rather be in practice. I won't be on the board in a year, but I'd rather be in practice, when it does come. So.
Sorry, that was not helpful. So I think at this point we've deliberated quite a bit and we've shared a lot of opinions. And I think it would be good to take a poll of kind of where we're at. So in listening, do hear general consensus for returning to Baden. I'm also hearing a desire for streaming. Where I'd like to take the poll is how to collect public comments so that way we can see if we need to deliberate further or if we are in a space where we can provide direction to staff. So we'll start all the way down at the end and we'll work our way up the L.
I'm for public comment both in person and via online and through like Zoom. Yeah.
In person.
Hybrid.
Hybrid would mean Zoom comments as well as in-person comments. So I am also in favor of in-person. So at this time, we are locked at 3 and 3. So I don't know, yeah, so at some point we do. Right, because staff will need to know because they.
I think it's a board decision. You guys have deliberated, but now it's to see if we could get to a place where you can be really clear on what it is you want so that staff and I can work on how we're going to make it happen.
Is there a cost to having the technology department, more of the technology department?
Of course, we'll have to have a staff person to manage the in-person and we'll have to have a staff person to manage the online. Yes.
Student trustee Avila Gomez.
Sorry, I don't know how the agenda works completely yet. Is there any way that we can open this up for public comment to hear from people?
So at this time, we have 8 attendees.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's typically what the pattern is. We open for public comment and then we have important deliberations, but which is not the end of the world. I mean, I'm sure there's people who are on the stream watching, but we lose a lot of our attendees.
I would also point out that typically if with this in person, we would ask people to turn in speaker's cards or ask for raising hands too.
Yes, that's true.
I think there's been a lot of conversation just about access and there's multiple ways to grant access. And we want and value people's feedback, but there are also multiple ways to elicit that feedback. Yes, we hear it at board meetings, but you guys are out in the community. You're getting a lot of feedback that way also. And so, I mean, if you take into consideration the question, I didn't even think of that. So I appreciate you raising that. Is there going to be a cost? There is going to be an increased cost. There's a cost to the captioning that we're providing. There's a cost to the Zoom. So yeah, it will be running both is going to be an added cost just for staffing purposes because it's overtime to have them 2 people present. And then if we're having someone check vaccination, that's another person, which we could double and have maybe some support from our tech to help with the vaccination checks. We'll figure it out, but it is something to consider.
I will point out that the captioner cost and the vaccination checker would be there whether or not we're taking public comment. So I do understand that we would need to talk about. Well, I mean, my concern is, it's been 18 months since we had an in-person meeting, so I'm trying to remember back to the setup we had. We did have one technical person who was there, mostly there to set up, make sure everything worked well during the meeting, and then to breakdown. Thank you, that was the term. But assuming everything's good, that person could probably also manage the online comments. No.
I don't think that, I don't think that that's feasible.
Okay.
Because you're going to need someone to manage the in-person and there's a lot of behind the scenes that happens. That person isn't going to be able to manage both, unfortunately.
Quick question. So if we vote tonight, does that change how our October 7th meeting is going to be?
This isn't an action item. It's only an information and discussion. So we deliberate and provide direction to staff.
I think, honestly, again, just bringing back up like
what voices we won't be hearing from. I think it's especially important with our October 14th special meeting coming up on our SLO MOU conversation with the city. I think if we're limiting, well, again, I don't know when this will alter, but I think just considering that that's a meeting that's coming up and we won't be hearing from voices that won't be able to come to these types of board meetings. It's especially important when we have these types of conversations.
I was going to bring up a question of what if we were going to have this, maybe just have online public comment through the general public comment section. And if someone had a comment for later on in the agenda, then they can make it during the remote public comment section. And then maybe we can let whoever that is, the second person go home. That might reduce our cost in terms of that. But that's just, that's getting into the what. I don't want to get into the, I mean, the how. I do want to get into what. I don't want to get into the how.
Certainly a good question about cost, especially in light of the budget presentation we just had. It does cause concern. The desire is to be accessible. I recognize deep in the middle of COVID, none of us were leaving our homes, at least I know most of us were not leaving our homes. We were not accessible. We did not walk the neighborhood. We did not go to the grocery store. We did not go to community events. These days, we're out and about and going to things and talking to the public. And I will say some of my favorite board meetings were in person and they were student presentations. I think of a presentation that Samantha gave several years ago. That was a very impactful board meeting and that room was filled with students. And I think that as we have transitioned, we have lost a lot of that. So the desire is still, yes, to be accessible. It is just also trying to balance costs, the asks on staff, and also just needing facilitation in general.
Well, Madam Chair, I think you're the president and we're deadlocked and, so I think you need, I think we can agree on the things that were in consensus and, technically this was an ordinance. I don't need to degrade our student trustees' participation, but legally her vote cannot count. So, if we want to, I can see how if we did a formal vote, it would go. So I will say that, if we decide not to continue remote public commenting, this will probably be something I would want to bring up again later. I do think, we are still in the middle of a pandemic and, if I would prevail upon you to consider that, at least consider it until we are declared out of the pandemic to continue that. But, I think we do need to move forward both with this meeting and with the issue in general, so.
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Baker. Vice President Richardson, and then we'll summarize.
Just basically, I think what I heard today in the news is that we're sort of turning the corner on it and there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm kind of hoping this is a trend and there's not going to be any new variants and stuff. I don't know, I probably was thinking, but I personally, since we are talking cost, an extra person, maybe we need a cost analysis from Mr. O, because we just got told about our budgets and stuff. We just don't want to add any more burdens to our budget. I mean, it's flexible. But we have to be responsible. We don't want to do something too expensive. I know we have this nice monitor. I think we approved it. It wasn't it $23,000 or something? Was this the one that cost 23?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but the overtime could be costly because some of the meeting goes up to 10, 11, 12, right? So that's a lot of hours of overtime. So it's kind of hard to predict And plus we keep adding additional meetings also. So that also, so it's hard to tell what additional meetings we add each month, right? So it's hard to project. I could do a range probably estimate, but it's very difficult to pinpoint because we don't know how many additional meetings we'll be adding through the year, how late each of meetings will run, so it's kind of hard to project, but it would be pretty significant because it's always overtime pay for another staff.
I also want to reiterate that our students are in school, our staff are working. And so, we're in a place where if we're asking our parents to bring their children into our schools, I'm not saying the pandemic isn't over, but they are bringing their kids to school and our staff is working and it's no different for us to meet in person and have a public in the room with us.
Can I make a suggestion, though? We do have 2 meetings coming up that we were hoping for large and public attendance and or input. First, we'll discuss the October 14th meeting to discuss a potential MOU with the city and police department. But actually, the community forum traditionally before the pandemic was something where we would may do a large scale invite to the community because it's about important topics that affect every student, and I think that the two topics that we have, nutrition services and potential for mandatory vaccinations, or at least a discussion of them, are something we do want large audiences for. I would request maybe that if we decide, if the decision with a consensus of the majority of the board is to not allow remote, to maybe make an exception for at least those 2 meetings.
The community forum is not a traditional board
So we
meeting.
don't need to follow, that doesn't count for that law.
No. The special board meeting is technically a board meeting. The only difference is the posted. It's a meeting we added afterwards. So sometimes when you add a special board meeting, the posting requirements are different. Regular board meetings, the agenda needs to go up 72 hours in advance. In special, it's only 24. Sorry, walk around with weird information.
But we would need to, if we did that again, and it's after October 1st, and we want to do the hybrid, we have to do all of the other steps that I listed. Right, because October 7th that's not the community forum, right? October 7th is a
October's
board meeting.
regularly scheduled board meeting. The 14th is a special and the 21st is the community forum.
I do think there's already the consensus that we will be meeting in person with public. I mean, I think we're already, the only issues that we're talking about are access at this point. I mean, remote. Yeah, public comment at this part.
So for me, I'd be willing to entertain perhaps using October as the transition month. So that way the public is informed, because at this time we have only 10 attendees. I don't know how many people are watching stream, but at this time, so perhaps use the month of October to transition the public comment and allow for both remote and in person. And then November, we switch to full in person. And if people want to access us, come to the meeting. We want to see you. We enjoy the public coming, or email us. Does that work? Okay, so one last check, because I realize we have direction on the stream, in person, public comment, vaccinations. Do we want public members who come to have vaccination status, proof of vaccination status, or no negative COVID test? I'm seeing a yes from Trustee Murray, yes from Trustee Shea, yes from Trustee Baker, and yes from Vice President Richardson. Okay. Dr. Moore, do you have enough direction from us?
I do. Thank you very much.
Yay, we did it. Good. Yay, team. All right. Okay. Sorry, I moved on the agenda. All right, our next information discussion item this evening is human resources. Update on district enrollment. Staff will present information on the enrollment of South San Francisco Unified School District students for the 21-22 school year for a 4-year enrollment trend.
Thank you, President Lujan and board members, community. Shared access. I'm asking Mr. Irish for shared access to share my screen if at all possible. Yeah, just will you pop it up? You do the first one, which would be the enrollment 2021. Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Irish, can you make that just a little bit bigger, if at all possible? So trustees, community, I just want to show the enrollment differences between last year and this year. We did trying to do apples to apples. So this is the first 10 days of enrollment. If you notice from our enrollment from all of our elementary schools, you will notice a decrease in enrollment from last year to this year. Elementary, we lost 183 students. This once again, it's just the first 10 days of school compared to the last year's first 10 days of school. So these numbers can change. We look at our middle schools, we lost about 47 students in those first 10 days. We had Parkway, a little bit of growth, but the other two middle schools, a little bit of a drop. We look at our high schools, both El Camino, South City, and Baden, we lost 27 students. And if we look at our other programs, independent study, middle college, our other 2-day schools, we have minus 20 students. So if you go to the very bottom, Mr. Irish, we have a loss of 277 students from the previous year, which is a 3.4, once again, a 3.4% decline. So looking at those numbers, I just wanted to show, we've been collecting this data for about 7 years, at least since I've been here. So it shows you, can you pop to the other slide, Mr. Irish? I wanted to show you our 4-year trend with the exact same information. So the exact same information, if you look at elementary, 4 years ago, once again, these are the first 10 days of school. So after the 10th day, these are the numbers. We had 3,842 students in 2018. We now have 3,526 for 2021. The middle school, once again, 1914 down to 1734. We go to our high schools, 2615 to 2544, and our total really is 8453, I believe, and then 7877. So the past 4 years, the trend we've had prior to the last year, we lost 1.6% of our students. The year before that, we lost 2% of our students. Our 3-year trend has been 6.03%, so roughly 2%. Our 7-year trend has been 10.2%. So we've lost about 1.46%, 1.5% of our student population over the last 7 years. And that's been a trend that's actually gone for a longer period of time than just 7 years. But that's when I took the role and I've collected actually my own information. Mr. Oates presented to you the unaudited actuals. So the LCFF is not based on necessarily student enrollment, but we do get funding based on student enrollment. So we lose some of the federal funding dollars, other dollars associated with students, and some of these students that may be unduplicated and such. So with that said, I just wanted to show you the enrollment numbers. We have been declining enrollment for quite a while, which gives us some more classroom space. You will hear in the future, there is sorry, I'm spinning back, making sure we're in there. There is going to happen. We're going to have TK for all. Right now, our TK programs, we have 5 classrooms of TK, which services about 96 students at 5 of our sites. And that's for students that are September through December birthdays. Eventually, it's going to be all 4-year-old students. So we're going to need some additional classroom space, as well as right now we are staffing at a 24-to-1 ratio in TK, and eventually it's going to be at a 10-to-1 ratio down the road. So we're going to need additional facilities. I'm bringing this as a precursor. We'll have more information, but I'm saying we've had this declining enrollment for a while. This is not something new. One of the things that we do in HR and student services, we do project based on enrollment numbers, our staffing needs. And so we were projecting about a 1.5 to 2% loss. And so we were off by about 1.4, a little bit more over than 1.4%. So we looked at staffing, and I showed you some of our enrollment numbers in our elementary schools because they did lose about 180 students. We have some enrollment that is much lower than our 24-to-1 in our TK through third grade, and much lower in our fourth and fifth grade, which we typically staff at enroll at 33 students to 1. So we don't have a few classrooms that are at capacity at 24-to-1 or at 33-to-1. We do have a few over. I can share that with the board at a later date. But most of our classes in elementary TK3, since we've seen such a dramatic, some we have at 17, 18, 19 to 1, which is a very nice level that teachers really appreciate. And we thought, instead of condensing classes after the year started, since we're coming back from a pandemic and we have students there, we decided not to close classes or make split classes. That might not be the case for next year if we continue this. You've heard various things of, being on the peninsula, cost of living, you're hearing about the cost of living. And so we're hearing also people moving out of the area. I'll share data later on from exit survey data from our employees that people are moving out of the area. We do know that. But anyways, that is a little overview of enrollment for our Board of Trustees. And I'm willing to take any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Spalding. Trustee Murray?
I'm sorry, I didn't ask you any questions in advance. So if you don't have the answer, I'm fine with that. I can get it later. But I'm wondering, do we do any kind of survey? And do we compare this data with the city's data to see how many children are in the city, and then compare it to how many students we have?
Great question. Actually, Mr. Rowe, with a third-party contract that does an enrollment scan and gives us an enrollment projection 10 years out. So we actually have an enrollment projection 10 years out based on the the buildings that are currently happening right now in South San Francisco, the city of South San Francisco, Daly City, and San Bruno for Monteverde. So we do take those projections in when we're looking for our enrollment. They are showing a decline in enrollment still. The projection that we have, the 10 years out, we do actually have a couple schools that are going to increase enrollment based on where they are and where the new buildings are that are happening in South San Francisco, which are more on the east side. So those would be Los Cerritos, Martin, Spruce schools that are looking at an increase of enrollment.
Right.
And this is based on projections because we don't know who's going to actually move into. We're not going to see how many children they may bring. I mean, the trend is people getting married or having families are starting later. They're focusing on their careers. Some are not having multiple children. They're having one or maybe two children versus maybe 3 or 4. So we do look at trend data. Yes, we do.
Thank you. Trustee Baker?
One quick clarification question. We're talking actual enrollment here, not ADA, right?
This is actual enrollment. This is actually students in the seats.
And it does match, the detailed data from the census from last year's census hasn't come out yet to break it down by age group. But, I will say that, we are at probably about 65% of our all-time attendance, going back to the 1970s when we peaked. And I did do the math for between the 2000 and 2010 census. And, this is a city, and I'm limited to South San Francisco. I know we have a significant portion of Daly City and a little bit of San Bruno and a tiny bit of Colma. But in South San Francisco, where the population went up about 6,000 that time, the actual kids aged 5 through 17 went down by about 700. That shows what you're talking about, Dr. Spalding. It's just in general, families are having fewer children or delaying them later in life. I would not, I'm going to be honest here, expect a enrollment climb from the new buildings. They're mostly 1 bedrooms or studios. And we're continuing to see that, the median age of our city grows up as people age in their homes. Those homes that might have had 3 kids back in the day, now they have, 2 70-year-olds living in them. So And that's simply because people in their 30s aren't moving here because they can't afford it. So I think we will be seeing this trend continue for at least a couple years until maybe, God bless them, we have new generation take over in that home. But, that maybe if those children, but I don't think we can pin any hopes on large attendance increases at these East Side schools.
I have a question. Since the projection is that we don't know for sure, but the projection is that at Los Cerritos, Spruce, and Martin Elementary, there's going to be more students enrolling. What does this mean for the class cap sizes? As we have many teachers calling in saying that, there's too many students in their classroom, and that's with enrollment going down. So what does that mean when enrollment goes up? What are we doing to help these students? Because, we can't have a 40-to-1 ratio. What's the plans for class cap sizes?
No, great question. And so the staffing allotment we provide to the sites at the elementary level from TK to third grade, we do a 24-to-1 ratio. And for fourth and fifth grade, we do like a 33-to-1 ratio. So, and it matches out because 24, if you have, when I was at Bury, we had 96 students. We had 24 students in 4 classes, 96. When you get up to fourth grade, it's not 24-to-1 anymore. It ended up being 32, 3 classes of 32. At the middle and high schools, we provide a ratio of 28-to-1. And so we give the general allocation of teachers, FTEs, as we call them, full-time equivalents. So based on the number, and if I look at, let's just say, pick Alta Loma, there's 640 students. I would divide that by 28. And there's a couple other little tweaks in there and stuff like that. And that would give them the full-time equivalent of the teachers they're allotted from us. And then there's allotment from the SPED department based on special ed needs, as well as from Mr. Irish and Ed Services based on the LCAP, what we put in there, what needs. And so that's additional FTEs. And so I'm just going to say an arbitrary number of, they're given 40 FTEs, 40 full-time staff members. It could be 40.3, maybe we fudge it up to 41. They have to make their master schedule. So elementary is pretty easy, right? It's a kindergarten class, they're not going anyplace. Middle school and high school do the master scheduling, and there's some technique to it because you know how many English classes you have, but it might not be all first period. It can't be all second, and it's based then on credentialing of the teacher. So I have an English credential, and I can teach the 7-period day, but I only teach 6 periods. But you need 7 periods, so somebody else has to do that other English class. And so what ends up happening is sometimes if your master schedule is not super duper clean, I mean, it has to be so organized, you end up with those high class sizes because there's no place else for those students to go during a 3rd period. I'm just going to make them a third period, as the gentleman said, newcomer class. That's the only newcomer. Maybe we should have had 2 newcomer classes at the same time, but there was nobody to fill it. So that's why it's really based from the HR perspective on a specific formula. And then there's some additional funding provided. I hope I answered that question for you. If you need more, I can try to get you more information. We can talk it offline too. I can try to.
Dr. Spalding, I did forget one question.
Sure.
Where are the students that are in our virtual independent study group in this chart? Because obviously they're not under independent study.
Great question. These are actually counted in these numbers. So we count those students as still being with us.
At their home school?
At their home school. They're still in their home school. So they're not pulled out of this numbers. I didn't do a separate independent study column because if going through, I wanted to keep apples to apples. What Bury would have had, what Bury had last year, what Bury had this year, even if they're independent study, I just kept them in their numbers.
Dr. Shea?
Actually, Dr. Spalding already answered my question, so I'm good.
Vice President Richardson, did you have any questions?
No, I'm still suggesting this. Sorry, they were concerned about in 1979, I went back to the vault and they had about the same number of students, 8,000. About that number of students, they were concerned about declining enrollment as well. So I'm not sure how to compare that. But if you look at the census numbers, we barely did any in 10 years, gain anything in the last census here. So I'm sort of not optimistic that we'll add a lot of numbers here, but you know, it's like I still wonder. I mean, there's a lot of factors that are not going to line up for that. It's not that we're not you know, have the best kind of teaching environment and things we offer. I see, you know, the kids are happy here, and you know, I just see a lot of markers that encourage me that we're going to be okay. But it's just that people, just the cost of living is just prohibitive around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Richardson. And I just want to thank you, Dr. Spalding, for the update and the information. I am seeing that we are almost at 10 o'clock and we are due for a break for our captioner. In looking, we've made it to just action items. So if we take a 10-minute break, we do have 20 minutes to wrap up the meeting unless we want to vote to extend the meeting past 10:30. All right, so I guess we shall take a 10-minute break and we'll see you all soon. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. We'd like to continue with our regularly scheduled board meeting. We've moved into the action section of the meeting this evening. Our first item this evening is Resolution 21-47 for Filipino American History Month. Staff recommends the adoption of Resolution 21-47 honoring Filipino American History Month. Trustee Murray, would you like to read it into the record?
I would. South San Francisco Unified School District, Resolution 21-47, Filipino American History Month, October 1 through October 31st, 2021. Whereas the month of October was designated as Filipino American History Month in 2006 by the California Department of Education and by the United States Congress in November 2009. And whereas October was chosen to commemorate the arrival of the first Filipinos in the United States at Morro Bay, California in 1587, making them the earliest documented Asians to visit North America. And whereas Filipino Americans have for many generations contributed economically, culturally, and socially to the development of the United States history, and specifically to the 1960s United Farm Workers movement in California. And whereas it is important for Filipino American youth to celebrate their rich ethnicity and valuable legacy and to instill in them the importance of education. And whereas California Education Code 51204.5 specifically calls for instruction in the social sciences to include the study of the role and contributions of Asian Americans to the economic, political, and social development of California and the nation, with particular emphasis on portraying the role of this group in contemporary society. And whereas the Filipino American community is the second largest Asian American group in the United States and represents 4.1 million residents, with the largest single state population of 1.7 million in California alone, and 24% of the district students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the South San Francisco Unified School District Board of Trustees hereby recognizes and wishes to honor Filipino Americans during Filipino American History Month, regularly passed and adopted this 23rd day of September 2021.
Do you have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the resolution.
Thank you. We have a first by Trustee Baker,
Second.
second by Trustee Murray, but it looks like we had lots of support from everyone there. Roll call, please.
Student trustee Avila Gomez,
Sorry. Yes.
trustee Baker,
Yes.
trustee Shay,
Yes.
trustee Murray,
Yes.
Vice President Richardson, President Lujan.
Yes, motion passes unanimously. The next item this evening is approval of district's new and updated board bylaws and policies. Staff recommends the approval of the following new and updated district board bylaw and board policies as presented to the board, which include BP 3471, BP 3551, BP 4112.2, BP 5141.52, BP 5144.1, and BP 6172.1.
So moved.
All right, we have a first by Trustee Baker and a second by Trustee Shay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Next item is approval of the 21-22 SSFUSD governance calendar. Staff recommends the approval of the South San Francisco Unified School District 21-22 governance calendar, which highlights when certain items come before the board, categorized by department and month as presented to the board.
So moved.
So first by Trustee Baker, as second by Trustee Murray. All in favor? Aye, okay. Any opposed? Okay. Moving into education services. Approval of migrant education memorandum of understanding for 21-22. Staff recommends the approval of the migrant education MOU with the Santa Clara County Office of Education for the 21-22 school year as presented to the board. So moved. First by Trustee Murray. Second by Trustee Shay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Approval of contract with ATX Learning for the 21-22 school year. Staff recommends the approval of a contract with ATX Learning for the district to fulfill individualized education plan service agreements for the 21-22 school year as presented to the board.
I do have a very quick question. What's done to support the students until this resolution is passed? I mean, have they been without a teacher or?
The single Skype trustee Baker subbing it internally or with our sub pool.
I'll move this resolution.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, first by trustee Baker, second by trustee Murray. All in favor? Aye. All right, any opposed? No. All right. Next item, approval of agreement with Learning A to Z for the 21-22 school year. Staff recommends the approval of an agreement for services with Learning A to Z to deliver effective differentiated instruction for the 21-22 school year as presented to the board. We have a first by trustee Shea,
I'll second.
second by trustee Baker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Approval of work experience can work to work agreement for 21 through 24 and adoption of resolution 21-39. Staff recommends the approval of the Department of Rehabilitation's work experience can work agreement for the 21 through 24 school years and the adoption of resolution 21-39, authorizing designated district personnel to sign as presented to the board.
I'll move and request to waive the reading.
First by trustee Baker.
A second.
Vice President Richardson, you were on very quick. So second by Vice President Richardson. All in favor? Oh, wait, do we have to do a roll call because
Yes.
it's, yes. All right, roll call, please.
Student trustee Ebola Gomez,
Yes.
trustee Baker,
Yes.
trustee Shea, trustee Murray,
Yes.
Vice President Richardson, President Lujan.
Yes, motion carries. All right, moving into human resources. A resolution 21-48, week of the school administrator. Staff recommends the adoption of resolution 21-48 my screen jumped, to honor the contributions of the district's school leaders during the week of October 10th through 16th, 2021.
Let me read it.
Yep.
Okay. South San Francisco Unified School District Resolution 21-48, Week of the School Administrator, October 10th through 16th, 2021. Whereas leadership matters for California's public education system and the more than 6 million students it serves. And whereas school administrators are passionate, lifelong learners who believe in the value of quality public education. And whereas the title school administrator is a broad term used to define many education leadership posts, superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, assistant principals, special education and adult education leaders, curriculum and assessment leaders, school and business officials, classified educational leaders, and other school district employees are considered administrators. And whereas providing quality service for the student success is paramount for the profession, and whereas public schools operate with lean management systems across the nation, public schools employ fewer managers and supervisors than most public and private sector industries, including transportation, food service, manufacturing, utilities, construction, publishing, and public administration. And whereas school leaders depend on a network of support from school communities, fellow administrators, teachers, parents, students, businesses, community members, board trustees, college and universities, community and faith-based organizations, elected officials, and district and county staff and resources to promote ongoing student achievement and school success. And whereas research shows great schools are led by great principals and great districts are led by great superintendents, these site leaders are supported by extensive administrative networks throughout the state. And whereas the state of California has declared the second full week of October as the week of the school administrator in Ed Code 44015.1. And whereas the future of California's public education system depends upon the quality of its leadership. Now, therefore, be it resolved that South San Francisco Unified School District Board of Trustees hereby commends all school leaders. Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
In the South San Francisco Unified School District for the contributions they make to successful student achievement during the week of the school administrator, regularly passed and adopted this 23rd day of September, 2021.
Thank you. Wonderful team effort. Do we have a first? Okay, so first by trustee Murray and a second by Vice President Richardson. Roll call, please.
Student trustee Avila Gomez,
Yes.
trustee Baker,
Yes.
trustee Shay, trustee Murray,
Yes.
Vice President Richardson, President Lujan.
Yes. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes, by all means.
And I'd like to thank all of our administrators, the ones that are here and the ones that are maybe watching, but that are in our schools. And I think that we have the best school district in the world. And it's because we have great leaders. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for those words.
I second that emotion.
Okay. Approval of provisional intern permit. Staff recommends the approval of a provisional intern permit for Richard Mendez, a certificated employee at South San Francisco High School, as presented to the board.
So moved.
Second.
First by trustee Baker, second by trustee Murray. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Approval of variable term waiver. Staff recommends the approval of the variable term waiver for Wilfredo Feliciano, a certificated employee at El Camino High School, as presented to the board.
So moved.
So I got a first by trustee Murray, a second by Vice President Richardson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Business services, approval of unaudited actuals report. Staff recommends the approval of the 2021 unaudited actuals financial report as presented to the board. First by trustee Shay.
Second.
Second by Vice President Richardson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right. Approval of audio video system upgrade at Martin Elementary School. Staff recommends the approval of the quote from AVI SPL for upgrading the audio video system at Martin Elementary School as presented to the board. First by Vice President Richardson.
Second.
Second by trustee Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Review of future agenda items and meetings. Do we have any items that we wanted added or things moved? Okey dokey. Yes.
I'll own up to a typo. It's October 12th, not the 14th.
Okay.
That's how it's always been on the website, but for this one, I'll.
All right. That totally happens. And I was confused, but I wasn't going to say anything. I figured I just written it down wrong. So thank you. Okay. Summary of board directives.
I don't think there were any.
I don't recall any either. Wonderful. Good and welfare. We have 8 minutes, and I guess we'll start down and then work our way up.
So once again, I advertise for anyone to come to our various school events that we're having, our various, whether that be football games or volleyball games. Football games are free right now because, we just don't charge. We just ask people to wear a mask. And even though we are not taking that many wins, it's okay. We're still out there. We're still supporting our team. And they're trying very hard, but also our girls volleyball is having a good season as well. So if anyone would like to support them, that'd be awesome. That's all. Thank you.
I went to on September 10th, probably the most significant thing that I've done in the last month or since the last meeting was Principal Lunt had some first responders conduct a flag raising ceremony in commemoration of 9/11. And it was very touching. It was very well done. And I loved it. I also did some Zoom meetings with that.
I was also at that flag ceremony. It was emotional. This afternoon, I attended the viewing for Mr. Cresta, who taught at El Camino since 1964. Was mentioned earlier by several commenters. You know, it's hard to imagine someone teaching for 57 years. You know, I remember last year looking at the personnel list for the district. Not surprisingly, he was the last employee that we had hired in the 60s. But there were no employees left from the 70s left in the district, and there was maybe one employee left from the 80s still in the district. So he almost outlasted 3 decades worth of employees. So I met his family today, and they were really surprised and touched by the outpouring of support and memories from the school community. And just wanted to pass that on to the board, and if we can consider a brief moment of silence in his honor tonight.
I'm going to attend the mass tomorrow, but I have to say that I graduated from El Camino in 1974. I didn't have him, but I had lots of friends that had him. My cousin was telling me the other day, he graduated in 1982, and he had him all 4 years. His class was the first class that had 4 years at El Camino, because when I was here, it was 10th, 11th, and 12th. And but he said he took him the first time. He thought it was going to be an easy class because it was auto shop, and he was like, oh, he loved auto shop because he loved Mr. Cresta. Mr. Cresta like inspired him. And so he took all 4 years of auto shop, and now, you know, 50 something years old, he's still like tinkering with the toys, with the cars. And he has like an old car in his driveway that he's always doing something with. But anyway, that was, and various members of my family have had him since the 1970s.
Sorry. I went to the parents meeting for special education, and they had a speaker there. And the thing that stood out to me was that the parents were really very attentive to what the speaker was speaking about, but there was also a translator for Burmese, and that's a language I've never heard of spoken here, and that was very nice to see. It was well attended by parents. And then I went to 2 funeral wakes, one a former student of here, South San Francisco, and he had quite an outpouring of support. So many people came from the Hispanic community. He was a former alumni. His name was Caesar. Anyway, my kids didn't know him, so then I went and walked up to Mr. Cresta's, and he was just remarkable. I couldn't not go over there and just pay my last respects. I never knew Mr. Cresta, but I heard of him, and everything was so well put, and he was an inspiration to students, and tonight we heard that. But it was just so many great thoughts come to us, and we almost didn't get a chance to go inside to look because the family hadn't arrived and they had at 4 p.m. and stuff. We briefly got to pay our last respects to Mr. And then yesterday I went to the volleyball game with the girls playing against Jefferson, and they play their hearts out. And that's all my report today.
Thank you, Vice President Richardson. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our teachers, our classified staff, and our administrators. This week, we've received a lot of communication from our teachers and members of our South San Francisco Unified School District staff, and I just want to thank you for your engagement and want to reassure you that every communication is read. So thank you. And thank you for your work to support our students. Much appreciated. This evening, I would like to close in honor of two employees who have passed. John Perrix passed away on September 5th at the age of 82. He worked as an electrician for the district beginning in 2000 and worked through 2006. In addition, as we've heard this evening, Mr. Cresta, Jim Cresta, passed away the weekend of September 11th. He taught for the district for 57 years at El Camino High School, starting in 1964, where he taught auto shop and health. I'd like to take a moment of silence for both of these individuals. And with that,